What I'm about to share will fundamentally alter your understanding of 3I Atlas and the current events unfolding within our solar system. While the public grapples with classifying it as a comet or something else, declassified documents and clandestine observations paint a starkly different picture, one that authorities wish to keep suppressed. Just a few days ago, a coronal mass ejection impacted 3I Atlas. The aftermath defied all known physical principles. Instead of disintegration or redirection, the celestial body absorbed the energy equivalent of 1 trillion atomic bombs, transforming it into structured signals aimed directly at Earth. The fourfold amplification in brightness was not a natural occurrence. It was a calculated and intentional act, beyond the capabilities of any known celestial object. And this is merely the prelude. Subsequent calculations, derived from trajectory data gathered by 227 observatories globally, indicate that 3I Atlas possesses a mass of at least 33 billion tons, rendering it denser than neutron star material. Astonishingly, it manages to mask its gravitational influence. The mathematical evidence is irrefutable, yet it presents a reality that challenges our fundamental perceptions of matter, energy, and technological limits. Here's what remains undisclosed. The 20 scientists who publicly voiced their concerns were merely the visible portion of a much larger group. Numerous other researchers have been coerced into silence, their funding jeopardized and careers threatened for daring to ask the pertinent questions. Simultaneously, deep space surveillance networks, originally designed for military purposes, have detected structured transmissions emanating from 3I Atlas that bear no resemblance to any known natural phenomena. The time frame for whatever 3I Atlas intends is not measured in months, but in weeks. The December deadline is not conjecture. It is a mathematical certainty, derived from orbital mechanics and the most advanced mission planning ever recorded. Whether this heralds first contact or a far more unsettling development, the evidence strongly suggests that humanity is about to learn it has never been alone in the cosmos. Before we embark on this exploration together, please engage with the like button and subscribe to receive updates on this evolving narrative. Share in the comments your location, the current time there, and the most peculiar experience you've ever encountered. Chapter 1. The 20 Scientists' Revelation. On September 19, 2025, an extraordinary event occurred that would irrevocably disrupt the prevailing scientific consensus regarding astronomy. A research paper, authored by 20 scientists from institutions across 3 continents, was published online. Its conclusions were so groundbreaking that within hours, careers were imperiled, funding was scrutinized, and the entire scientific establishment initiated efforts to contain what they perceived as a critical breach of protocol. The paper's title, Statistical Analysis of Trajectory Anomalies in Interstellar Object 3I Atlas, was deliberately understated. However, embedded within its complex mathematical frameworks and formal academic language lay a revelation that would torment astronomers for weeks. These 20 researchers had placed their professional standing on the line to assert a single, alarming claim. 3I Atlas was exhibiting behavior inconsistent with any natural celestial body. Dr. Eleonora Vasquez, a specialist in planetary dynamics at the European Southern Observatory, served as the lead author. Her qualifications were impeccable, her research methods beyond reproach, and her conclusions were profoundly challenging to conventional explanations. Leaked correspondence, later revealed through academic freedom of information requests, shows her writing to a colleague, "The trajectory data is keeping me awake at night. We're observing a level of navigational precision that would make our most advanced spacecraft engineers envious. This is not random, this is not natural, and we must initiate discussions about its profound implications." The paper's core argument was substantiated by a statistical analysis of such rigor that even detractors found it difficult to fault. When 3I Atlas was first detected hurtling through space at approximately 200,000 kilometers per hour, its path initially appeared unremarkable, beyond its undeniable interstellar origin. It was seen as merely another cosmic entity, expelled from a distant stellar system and traversing the void for millennia. However, as additional observatories monitored its trajectory, a pattern emerged that defied rational explanation. The object was not simply passing through our solar system. It was approaching 3 of our major planets, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, with what the researchers termed impossible precision. The statistical probability of such alignments occurring by chance was less than 1 in 5,000. Dr. James Chan, an expert in astronavigation at MIT, who contributed vital calculations to the analysis, struggled to find terrestrial comparisons for their observations. He explained to colleagues in private communications that were later leaked, "Imagine standing in New York and throwing a dart that lands perfectly in the bullseye in London. Then imagine that same dart, through some miraculous ricochet, hits bullseyes in Paris and Rome with equal accuracy." This is essentially what we are witnessing with 3I Atlas, except the distances involved are measured in hundreds of millions of kilometers. The mathematical exactitude was the paper's most compelling aspect. These were not vague observations or subjective interpretations. The trajectory data was concrete, verifiable, and accessible to any institution possessing the computational capacity for analysis. The 20 scientists had simply performed the calculations that others had hesitated to undertake. Each planetary encounter was timed with an almost clockwork regularity. 3I Atlas was scheduled to pass Venus at a distance of 0.2 astronomical units on October 15th. Mars was to be observed more closely on October 3rd, with the object approaching to within 0.19 astronomical units. Jupiter, the solar system's immense gravitational anchor, was to be observed from 0.36 astronomical units on March 16th of the following year. But it wasn't solely the precision that alarmed the researchers, it was the remarkable efficiency. If 3I Atlas had been engineered by human designers to survey the solar system's principal bodies, they could not have devised a more optimal route. The object's trajectory facilitated maximum data acquisition from each planet while minimizing the energy expenditure for course adjustments. Dr. Maria Santos, a mission planning specialist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, who independently reviewed the calculations without being part of the official study, found herself compelled to consider possibilities that challenged her established worldview. She confided to trusted associates, "We dedicate years to planning trajectories for our own spacecraft to accomplish far less ambitious objectives. What we are seeing here suggests a level of mission planning that implies either extraordinary fortune or deliberate intent." The paper meticulously detailed every facet of the trajectory analysis. Extensive calculations of orbital mechanics filled numerous pages, each equation reinforcing the undeniable conclusion that 3I Atlas was following a path optimized for scientific return while minimizing the risk of detection. This was the hallmark of intelligent mission planning. However, perhaps the most disconcerting aspect was the object's vector of approach. Unlike typical interstellar visitors, which enter the solar system from random directions, 3I Atlas originated from the direction of Sagittarius, directly towards the galactic center, where the dense stellar background would have rendered early detection exceedingly difficult. It was as if the object had been intentionally obscured until the opportune moment. The timing of its discovery was equally suspicious. 3I Atlas was first detected only upon reaching Jupiter's orbit, affording humanity a mere few months for observation and analysis before it vanished behind the Sun. A longer observation period would have allowed for more in-depth study, potentially revealing secrets its creators might prefer to keep concealed. Dr. Robert Kim, a computational modeling specialist at Stanford, who ran thousands of simulations to validate the trajectory calculations, began to question long-held professional assumptions. In private communications, he stated, "Natural objects do not optimize their paths. They adhere to the laws of physics but do not exhibit strategic foresight. What we are observing here suggests a meticulously planned course with specific objectives." The academic response to the paper was immediate and severe. Within 24 hours of its publication, senior astronomers from NASA, the European Space Agency, and prominent universities worldwide issued statements questioning the methodology, conclusions, and even the professional integrity of the authors. Dr. Margaret Thompson, NASA's chief scientist for solar system small bodies, held an emergency press conference dismissing the work as speculative conjecture that reached conclusions far exceeding the data's support. Her statement emphasized that 3I Atlas displayed clear characteristics of a natural comet, complete with observable outgassing and an evolving coma. Yet, the institutional response revealed a disquieting trend. Rather than engaging with the specific mathematical arguments presented in the paper, critics focused on discrediting unconventional findings, leaving the trajectory data itself unaddressed. as if acknowledging its accuracy would legitimize inquiries the establishment preferred to avoid. Dr. Eleonora Vasquez found herself at the epicenter of a professional maelstrom. Her department head at the European Southern Observatory summoned her for a meeting to express concerns regarding the direction of her research. Colleagues with whom she had collaborated for years suddenly became unavailable for meetings, and conference organizers began withdrawing speaking invitations. Similar pressures were exerted on other signatories of the paper. Dr. James Chen at MIT reported that his access to certain computational resources had been subtly curtailed. Dr. Santos at JPL found herself excluded from mission planning discussions she had routinely attended. The unspoken message was clear: challenging established paradigms carried significant professional repercussions. However, the 20 scientists had anticipated such a reaction. In private correspondence, they had discussed the inherent risks of publication and had agreed that the implications were too profound to be suppressed for personal career considerations. If their hypothesis regarding 3I Atlas representing artificial intelligence was accurate, humanity had a right to know, irrespective of institutional comfort levels. The paper's release triggered responses that extended far beyond academic circles. Within hours, it had been downloaded over 50,000 times. Science journalists grappled with the technical intricacies while seeking accessible explanations of the broader implications. Social media platforms experienced an explosion of discussions concerning extraterrestrial visitors and alleged government cover-ups. Amateur astronomers globally initiated their own trajectory analysis projects, utilizing publicly available orbital data to corroborate the paper's calculations. Remarkably, multiple independent analyses confirmed the mathematical findings, even when conducted by individuals unconnected to the original research team. The decentralization of the analytical process presented a challenge to authorities attempting to control the narrative. Unlike previous controversial astronomical claims that required specialized equipment or privileged access for verification, the trajectory data for 3I Atlas was publicly accessible. Any individual with a sufficient mathematical background could confirm the anomalous nature of the object's path. Online communities dedicated to tracking 3I Atlas saw their membership surge exponentially. Forums that had previously attracted a few hundred dedicated amateur astronomers now hosted discussions among thousands of participants, including professional scientists who chose to engage anonymously to safeguard their institutional positions. The 20 scientists had anticipated professional backlash but had not foreseen the immense public interest their paper would generate. Dr. Vasquez later admitted that she had hoped for a contained academic debate concerning methodology and conclusions. Instead, she found herself at the forefront of a global discourse on humanity's place in the universe. Intelligence agencies worldwide took note of the paper's findings and the ensuing public reaction. Classified briefings were prepared for high-ranking government officials, detailing the potential ramifications of confirming 3I Atlas as a sign of artificial intelligence. The scenarios presented were somber, ranging from peaceful scientific exchange to existential threats to human civilization. However, most significantly, the paper achieved what decades of SETI research had failed to accomplish. It elevated the possibility of extraterrestrial contact from the realm of speculation to that of peer-reviewed scientific analysis. 20 credentialed researchers had publicly declared that the evidence supported an artificial origin for 3I Atlas. The scientific establishment found itself in an untenable position. Acknowledging the trajectory analysis's validity would lend credence to the possibility of humanity being visited by alien intelligence. Dismissing it outright risked appearing to suppress legitimate scientific inquiry. The apparent solution was to disregard the paper entirely, hoping that public interest would dissipate without institutional engagement. However, this strategy proved counterproductive. The silence from major astronomical institutions was interpreted by many as confirmation that the paper's conclusions were too dangerous to address publicly. Conspiracy theories proliferated in the absence of official responses, often proposing explanations far more dramatic than anything the 20 scientists had posited. Dr. Vasquez and her colleagues became reluctant public figures, their online professional profiles inundated with interview requests from podcasters, documentary filmmakers, and journalists worldwide. Most declined, preferring to let their research speak for itself rather than risk further damage to their professional relationships. Yet, the impact had already been made. The paper had introduced a level of scientific credibility to theories of alien visitation that had never before existed. The mathematical precision of the trajectory analysis made it impossible to dismiss the conclusions as mere speculation or wishful thinking. As September concluded and October commenced, 3I Atlas continued its inexorable journey through the solar system, seemingly oblivious to the turmoil it had ignited on Earth. Each passing day brought new observations, new data points that either supported or contradicted the various hypotheses regarding its nature. The object had transcended its status as an astronomical curiosity. It had become a test of humanity's readiness to confront possibilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about their place in the cosmos. And the 20 scientists who had dared to publish their analysis ensured that those possibilities could no longer be ignored. The trajectory data did not lie. 3I Atlas was following a path that indicated intentional design rather than random chance. Whether that design originated from natural processes yet undiscovered by human science or from an intelligence beyond Earth remained to be determined. But one certainty remained: the comfortable assumption of humanity's solitude in the universe had been profoundly shaken by 20 researchers willing to follow the data, regardless of personal and professional costs. The bombshell had been dropped. The critical question now was whether the scientific community, and indeed humanity as a whole, was prepared to confront the implications. Chapter 2. Loewy's mothership theory goes viral. Avik Loewy had built a career on contemplating the improbable. As the Frank B. Baird Jr., professor of science at Harvard University and the longest-serving chair in the history of the astronomy department, he had earned the privilege to speculate on ideas that would have ended lesser careers. Yet, even by his own standards, his publication on his Medium blog on August 5, 2025, was nothing short of revolutionary. The post commenced with Loewy's characteristic fusion of rigorous mathematics and accessible prose, outlining the fundamental characteristics of 3I Atlas in terms understandable to both peers and the general public. He discussed the object's size, velocity, and trajectory with the clinical accuracy that had established him as one of the world's most respected astrophysicists. But then came the passage destined to be screenshotted, disseminated, and scrutinized by millions globally. The more plausible scenario from an engineering perspective, Loewy wrote with the calm authority of decades in theoretical physics, involves a mothership that deploys numerous probes, which then execute a reverse orbital maneuver to decelerate at perihelion and intercept Earth, leveraging the Sun's gravitational assist. A mothership. The term alone was sufficient to ignite a media frenzy that would persist for weeks. However, Loewy did not stop at merely introducing the concept and retreating to academic safety. He proceeded to meticulously describe, with clinical detail, the exact mechanics of such a deployment, including calculations demonstrating that small probes could reach Earth within months of their release from the primary craft. The timing, according to his models, would be precise and alarming. The deployment would occur as 3I Atlas reached its closest proximity to the Sun, a moment when the object would be obscured from Earth-based observation behind our star's dazzling disk. Loewy calculated with mathematical certainty that the arrival window for any released probes would be between November 21st and December 5th, 2025. The implications were staggeringly profound. If Loewy's hypothesis proved correct, humanity was not merely observing an alien visitor transiting their solar system, they were witnessing the deployment phase of what could be either the most significant scientific mission in history or something far more sinister. The Harvard professor was careful to avoid speculating about intentions, but the internet harbored no such reservations. Within 6 hours of its publication, Loewy's blog post had garnered over 800,000 views. By the end of the first day, that figure had surpassed 2 million. News organizations worldwide clamored for interviews, but the physicist had seemingly vanished from public view. His university email provided an automated response stating he was unavailable for comment, and his research assistants claimed complete ignorance of his whereabouts. The timing could not have been worse for NASA and other space agencies already struggling to control the narrative surrounding 3I Atlas. Just as they believed they had definitively classified the object as an unusual but ultimately natural comet, one of the world's most esteemed astrophysicists had publicly posited that it might be an alien mothership preparing to deploy what could only be construed as an invasion force. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, NASA's director of astrobiology and a longstanding colleague of Loewy's, found herself in the unenviable position of addressing questions about theories proposed by someone she considered a friend and mentor. Professor Loe's speculation extends far beyond what the available evidence can substantiate, she stated during a hastily arranged press conference. While we respect his contributions to astrophysics, these particular ideas represent conjecture rather than scientific analysis. However, Mitchell's measured response was overwhelmed by the tsunami of public reaction that Loe's post had unleashed. Social media platforms experienced unprecedented levels of activity as individuals shared theories, expressed fears, and discussed preparations for what many were calling the most pivotal event in human history. The hashtag Alien Mothership rapidly ascended to global prominence, amassing an astounding 10 million posts within its inaugural week. Retailers specializing in survival provisions witnessed an unprecedented surge in demand as individuals, driven by an unarticulated but potent premonition, proactively prepared for unforeseen eventualities. Essential supplies such as emergency provisions, water purification systems, and communication devices vanished from store shelves. Concurrently, several major metropolitan areas became the focal points of spontaneous public demonstrations. Participants, bearing placards that proclaimed, "Disclose the truth regarding 3E Atlas. We possess the right to know what approaches," vehemently demanded governmental transparency regarding the celestial object. The scientific community found itself acutely fractured by Dr. Loeb's controversial intervention. While a segment of his peers lauded his courage in pursuing unconventional hypotheses, others expressed grave concern that his pronouncements were undermining the integrity of rigorous astronomical research. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, an astrophysicist affiliated with the University of Chicago, articulated the pervasive frustration felt by many when she stated to a science correspondent, "AI has consistently challenged established norms, a trait that has historically benefited the field." However, this instance feels qualitatively different. It appears to represent a complete abandonment of scientific prudence. Nevertheless, Loeb's analysis was not rooted in unfounded conjecture or wishful thinking. His conceptualization of a reverse OIRTH maneuver drew directly from established principles of orbital mechanics, a technique human engineers had employed for decades to skillfully alter the trajectories of spacecraft. The core idea involved leveraging the gravitational influence of a celestial body to modify a vehicle's velocity and vector, but in an inverted manner, specifically to decelerate rather than accelerate. Dr. James Harrison, a distinguished researcher at the Propulsion Laboratory and a veteran of numerous Mars missions, found himself compelled to reluctantly validate the theoretical underpinnings of Loeb's proposed scenario. In a peer-reviewed publication released mere weeks after Loeb's online treatise, Harrison meticulously demonstrated that the reverse OIRTH maneuver concept was not only feasible but demonstrably optimal for the precise mission Loeb had envisioned. Harrison remarked, employing precise academic terminology that nonetheless unequivocally supported Loeb's central premise, were one to design an interstellar expedition intended to deploy reconnaissance probes within an alien solar system. This particular approach would maximize operational efficiency while simultaneously minimizing the risk of detection. It embodies a level of sophisticated engineering that any seasoned mission planner would undoubtedly admire. The imprimatur of academic credibility lent to Harrison's analysis rendered it untenable for authorities to dismiss the mothership hypothesis as mere fanciful speculation. Here was a scientist from NASA, publishing in a reputable journal, confirming that an extraterrestrial deployment scenario was not only plausible but logically sound. This endorsement ignited renewed waves of conjecture across both scientific and popular media landscapes. Amateur radio operators worldwide suddenly found themselves at the forefront of the 3E Atlas investigation. Enthusiasts of ham radio, many of whom had been passively monitoring the object since its initial detection, began reporting the reception of unusual signals that appeared to align with Loeb's hypothesized deployment timeline. These signals were characterized by their faintness and intermittency, factors that could easily be attributed to equipment anomalies or terrestrial interference. However, their precise timing rendered them too compelling to disregard entirely. Marcus Chen, a retired electronics engineer and a dedicated amateur radio operator hailing from New Mexico, was among the vanguard in identifying structured patterns within the signals he was detecting. He explained in a YouTube video that rapidly garnered over 3 million views, "I have dedicated 40 years to listening to the cosmos. I am intimately familiar with the sonic signatures of cosmic background radiation and pulsars. What I am encountering here is distinct, It possesses an organized quality, almost as if it is conveying information. Upon analysis by independent audio specialists, Chen's recordings revealed distinct mathematical progressions, which some interpreted as deliberate attempts at artificial communication. The signals appeared to pulse in sequences derived from prime numbers and Fibonacci progressions, patterns that, from a statistical standpoint, were highly improbable to occur naturally, yet perfectly congruent with methods human scientists might employ to signal intelligence to potential extraterrestrial observers. The amateur radio community experienced a sharp polarization regarding the significance of these findings. While some operators corroborated similar detections with their own equipment, others maintained they had registered no unusual activity. Online forums dedicated to radio astronomy devolved into arenas of intense debate between proponents and skeptics, characterized by escalating acrimony over data interpretation and methodological rigor. Government agencies grappled with an informational management crisis of unprecedented magnitude. Acknowledging the amateur radio reports would inherently lend credence to the notion that 3 Atlas was actively engaged in communication. Conversely, outright dismissal risked the perception of suppressing legitimate scientific data. The chosen course of action appeared to be one of studied silence, a strategy that paradoxically served to further inflame conspiracy theories. In parallel, Loeb's mothership scenario garnered unexpected validation from within the aerospace engineering sector. Computer simulations conducted by independent researchers substantiated his assertion that the proposed deployment strategy would indeed be optimal for an interstellar reconnaissance mission. The underlying mathematics were elegant, the physics were sound, and the tactical advantages were irrefutable. Dr. Elisa Park, a systems engineer at MIT specializing in multi-body orbital dynamics, published a comprehensive analysis of Loeb's scenario that sent reverberations through both scientific and military circles. Her research demonstrated that 3 Atlas could theoretically deploy dozens of diminutive probes while maintaining its primary trajectory, thereby establishing a comprehensive survey network across the inner solar system. Park articulated in language that resembled a military directive more than an academic paper, the deployment configuration Loeb outlines would facilitate systematic reconnaissance of all major planetary bodies while preserving operational security. This represents a level of sophisticated mission planning that surpasses our current capabilities. The international reaction to Loeb's hypothesis illuminated the profound apprehensions harbored by governments worldwide concerning 3 Atlas. Space agencies that had initially discounted extraterrestrial theories began to qualify their pronouncements with carefully worded statements about ongoing investigations and evolving understanding. Russia's response proved particularly revealing. Dmitry Volkov, the director of the Russian Academy of Sciences Institute for Space Research, stated in a state media interview that international collaboration on 3 Atlas monitoring ought to be augmented with immediate effect. This object presents phenomena that no single nation can fully comprehend independently, he declared with uncharacteristic candor. We must pool our resources and share our data if we aspire to grasp what we are observing. China's National Space Administration, typically reticent regarding its space surveillance activities, abruptly commenced sharing detailed tracking data with international partners. This unprecedented transparency prompted speculation about what Chinese scientists might be observing that prompted such a significant departure from decades of established information-sharing policies. The European Space Agency undertook the unusual measure of convening an emergency assembly of its Space Situational Awareness Program, bringing together experts from across the continent to evaluate the implications of Loeb's scenario. While the official outcome of this gathering remained undisclosed, leaked documents suggested that the agency was discreetly formulating contingency strategies for managing potential extraterrestrial contact. Social media platforms struggled to cope with the overwhelming influx of content related to Loeb's mothership theory. Conspiracy narratives proliferated exponentially, intermingling legitimate scientific concerns with outlandish speculation concerning alien incursions and governmental cover-ups. Algorithmically driven recommendation engines amplified the most captivating content, which frequently comprised the most sensationalized and least accurate information. The psychological impact of Loeb's scenario began to manifest in quantifiable ways. Mental health professionals reported a significant uptick in anxiety-related inquiries, particularly from individuals fixated on calculating approach vectors and deployment schedules. Online support networks emerged for those grappling with what psychologists began to term contact anxiety, the pervasive fear that humanity was ill-prepared for impending developments. Religious communities found themselves confronting theological ramifications they had previously given little serious consideration. Some leaders interpreted 3E Atlas as a sign of divine intervention, while others viewed it as a trial of faith. The Vatican issued a meticulously worded statement, acknowledging that divine creation encompasses limitless possibilities while underscoring the importance of maintaining faith in providential guidance, rather than succumbing to apprehension. However, perhaps the most disquieting aspect was Loeb's analysis of what he termed the stealth deployment advantage. According to his calculations, any probes released by 3E Atlas during its solar approach would be rendered virtually undetectable until they themselves initiated a revelation of their presence. The combined effects of solar interference and the probe's presumed diminutive size would render them impervious to tracking by current Earth-based technologies. The deployment window offers perfect operational concealment, Loeb stated in a subsequent post that garnered even greater attention than his initial theory. Any objects released would be masked by solar radiation, concealed within the electromagnetic chaos of our star's immediate proximity. By the time they become discernible, they will have already reached their designated mission destinations. The ramifications of this stealth capability were profound. If Loeb's assessment proved accurate, humanity might remain entirely oblivious to any probe deployment until such objects chose to initiate contact or reveal themselves. The prospect of extraterrestrial surveillance operating undetected in Earth's vicinity signaled a fundamental paradigm shift in humanity's perception of planetary security. Entities found themselves navigating scenarios for which no prior training had adequately prepared them. The possibility that Earth might soon become the locus of alien technology transitioned from the realm of speculative fiction into the domain of operational planning and practical reality. Deep space monitoring networks, originally conceived for tracking asteroids and orbital debris, abruptly assumed national security significance. Yet, Loeb himself remained conspicuously absent from the public discourse his theory had ignited. Colleagues reported that he had rescinded all speaking engagements and conference appearances. His Harvard office stood vacant, with departmental staff professing no knowledge of his whereabouts or availability. The disappearance of such a prominent figure only served to amplify the speculation surrounding his dramatic entry into the 3E Atlas. Discussion. The mothership theory had fundamentally reshaped the narrative surrounding humanity's enigmatic visitor. What had commenced as scientific curiosity regarding an anomalous celestial body had escalated into global concern regarding potential extraterrestrial contact. And as Loeb's calculated deployment window rapidly approached, the stakes escalated with each passing day. Chapter 3. Anomaly Alert, the deepening mystery of the object. Dr. Michael Jang, while engaged in routine photometric observations at the European Southern Observatory, detected a phenomenon that would irrevocably alter the scientific comprehension of 3E Atlas. It was the 27th of September, 2025, shortly after 2 in the morning local time, when his instruments registered readings that compelled him to question the very calibration of his equipment. 3E Atlas was undergoing growth. This was not the typical expansion anticipated from comets as they neared the Sun, characterized by the development of longer tails and larger comas due to sublimating ice. Jang's measurements indicated that the object's solid nucleus itself appeared to be physically expanding, manifesting new structural features that had been absent in prior observations. For the subsequent 4 hours, Jang meticulously re-examined his data, convinced he had committed a fundamental analytical error. He reviewed his calibration protocols, inspected his equipment for any malfunctions, and even reanalyzed months of archived observations to ensure he had not overlooked any obvious detail. However, every test confirmed the same improbable conclusion. 3E Atlas was actively altering its physical structure. The initial response of any scientist upon encountering anomalous data is to assume a personal error. Jang later elucidated during an emergency press conference hastily convened by the ESO. I verified everything twice, then again. I enlisted colleagues to validate my methodology, but the evidence was incontrovertible. This object is transforming in ways that challenge our fundamental understanding of celestial body behavior. Jang's discovery precipitated an immediate global mobilization of telescopes. Every major observatory equipped to track 3E Atlas was pressed into emergency service, establishing an unprecedented international monitoring network. The deluge of data acquired over the ensuing 72 hours painted a picture for which no existing scientific literature provided an interpretive framework. High-resolution imaging from the Hubble Space Telescope revealed what appeared to be geometric structures emanating from the object's surface. These were not the randomly chaotic formations typically observed in cometary outgassing or debris shedding. They were organized, symmetrical, and exhibited growth patterns suggestive of deliberate construction rather than natural evolution. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the imaging specialist at the Space Telescope Science Institute, who had initially expressed skepticism regarding extraterrestrial theories, found herself confronted with data that challenged her deeply held convictions about celestial objects. Following 18 consecutive hours of analyzing the Hubble observations, she finally consented to provide a statement detailing findings that would profoundly impact the astronomical community. "We are observing the emergence of structures that exhibit clear indications of geometric organization," she stated during a hastily arranged live-stream press briefing that attracted an audience exceeding 5 million viewers. These formations display symmetry, coordination, and developmental patterns inconsistent with any known natural process. The structures appear to be extruding from specific points on 3 Atlas's surface, extending outwards in configurations resembling antennae or sensory arrays. Spectroscopic analysis indicated that they comprised materials fundamentally distinct from the object's primary mass, exhibiting absorption lines consistent with complex metallic compounds rather than the expected mixture of ice and rock characteristic of a comet. What amplified the disquiet surrounding these observations was the sheer velocity of the changes. Time-lapse photography documented the structures extending and articulating in real time, with movements occurring far too rapidly to be attributed to thermal expansion, gravitational forces, or any other natural mechanism identifiable by scientists. Amateur astronomers equipped with sophisticated instruments began reporting their own observations of the burgeoning structures, providing independent corroboration that the phenomenon was not confined to a select few professional observatories. Carlos Mendes, whose private observatory in Chile rivaled many institutional facilities, captured video footage that garnered over 15 million views within its first week online. "I have been imaging deep space objects for 20 years, Mendes explained in his now famous YouTube commentary accompanying the time-lapse footage. "I understand equipment limitations, atmospheric distortion, and imaging artifacts. What we are witnessing here is none of those things. We are observing something actively reconfiguring itself in real time, and it is happening at a scale and speed that defies natural explanation." The footage depicted 3 Atlas over a 12-hour observation period, providing clear evidence of new structures not only growing but demonstrably moving and repositioning themselves. The implications were staggering. If the observations were accurate, humanity was witnessing technology in operation, not a natural phenomenon. The scientific community descended into a state of turmoil as researchers struggled to process observations that contradicted decades of established understanding. Emergency meetings were convened at NASA headquarters, the European Space Agency, and leading universities globally. Peer review processes, typically spanning months, were compressed into mere days as scientists raced to publish their analyses of the rapidly evolving situation. However, the most alarming reports emanated from radio telescopes that had been monitoring 3 Atlas for electromagnetic emissions. The signals, previously faint and intermittent, abruptly intensified and became persistent, with transmission bursts precisely correlating with the emergence of each new physical structure. Dr. Frank Wilson, director of the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, found himself in the unprecedented position of acknowledging observations that challenged his lifelong adherence to conventional scientific explanations. "We are detecting structured electromagnetic emissions that directly correlate with visual observations of physical alterations within the object," he admitted during a congressional briefing that was subsequently leaked to multiple news outlets. "The probability that this correlation is coincidental approaches mathematical impossibility. The signals were not mere random electromagnetic noise or natural cosmic phenomena. Computer analysis revealed discernible mathematical patterns, sequences of prime numbers, and what appeared to be geometric diagrams encoded within the transmission structure. Most significantly, the signals seemed to be directed specifically toward Earth, rather than broadcast indiscriminately into space." Entities found themselves confronting a scenario that had eluded all contingency planning. The possibility that humanity was observing the real-time construction of extraterrestrial technology transitioned from theoretical speculation to operational reality within the span of a single week. Leaked documents from the Department of Defense revealed that military strategists had quietly initiated protocols originally developed during the Cold War to manage unprecedented technological threats. Communication networks were placed under enhanced monitoring. Deep underground command centers, which had not been fully operational since the nuclear tensions of the 1980s, were suddenly restored to readiness. The public response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media platforms experienced repeated crashes under the immense load of individuals sharing images, videos, and increasingly urgent theories about the growing structures. News networks abandoned their standard programming schedules to provide continuous coverage of what numerous commentators were hailing as the most significant story in human history. Financial markets worldwide experienced unprecedented volatility as investors grappled with the implications of confirmed extraterrestrial technology. Technology companies saw massive surges in their share prices, fueled by speculation about potential knowledge transfer opportunities, while traditional industries faced uncertainty regarding their relevance in a post-contact world. Religious leaders found themselves fielding questions for which no theological training had provided answers. The Vatican issued a carefully worded statement acknowledging that the universe contains mysteries beyond human comprehension, while emphasizing that divine love encompasses all creation, irrespective of its origin. Other religious organizations struggled to reconcile their doctrines with the undeniable reality of non-terrestrial intelligence. The burgeoning structures on 3 Atlas appeared to be adhering to a predetermined deployment schedule. Analysis of their emergence patterns suggested that the object was systematically constructing distinct types of formations, each seemingly serving a specific purpose within a larger, overarching design. Lisa Chen, a systems engineer affiliated with MIT, who had initiated an examination of the structural formation sequences, released an initial report that reverberated through military circles. Her scrutiny indicated that 3I Atlas was assembling what appeared to be an extensive network of sensors, systematically cultivating the capacity to survey diverse sectors of the solar system. The pattern of its development is excessively orderly, excessively deliberate to be naturally occurring, Chen articulated in a report that, while rapidly compiled, was exceptionally thorough. We are witnessing the systematic construction of what seems to be scientific apparatus. This entity is observing us with the same intensity with which we are observing it. The ramifications were incalculably immense. Should Chen's assessment prove accurate, 3I Atlas was not merely a transient extraterrestrial presence traversing the solar system. It represented an active exploratory endeavor, meticulously gathering intelligence on Earth and its populace. Humanity was not on the cusp of merely observing initial contact. Instead, they were the central subjects of scrutiny by an intelligence that had journeyed across the vastness of interstellar space for the express purpose of studying them. Governmental officials confronted the daunting task of managing public discourse concerning a rapidly unfolding situation that defied conventional diplomatic approaches. Public addresses evolved into carefully crafted evasions, acknowledging peculiar observations without confirming the extraterrestrial intelligence that was becoming increasingly evident to anyone monitoring these developments. Janet Peterson, the administrator of NASA, found herself delivering what would become one of the most dissected speeches in the agency's history during a primetime televised address to the nation. We are observing phenomena that challenge our present understanding of cosmic mechanics and material science, she stated, choosing her words with the exactitude of a high-stakes negotiation. Our resolve remains steadfast, scientific integrity and open communication as we endeavor to comprehend what is unfolding before us. Yet, beneath these measured public declarations, a profoundly different dialogue was taking place within secure briefings for high-ranking government appointees. The scenario depicted in those confidential sessions portrayed humanity confronting something that surpassed every framework for first contact that policymakers had ever envisioned. 3I Atlas was not behaving like the detached, passive alien intelligence that SETI researchers had hypothesized for decades. It was proactive, adaptable, and evidently conducting its own investigation of human civilization while humanity observed helplessly from distances spanning hundreds of millions of kilometers. The structure continued to expand and replicate with each passing day. Whatever 3I Atlas truly was, It was rendering its artificial nature progressively undeniable and defying conventional scientific explanations. Amateur radio operators reported detecting novel signal types as each component of the structure became functional, transmission patterns suggesting the entity was systematically probing various communication methods and frequency bands. Some operators claimed to perceive what appeared to be scanning sequences, as if the alien technology were methodically analyzing Earth's electromagnetic signature. The escalating complexity of the anomaly had transformed 3I Atlas from an unusual astronomical sighting into irrefutable evidence of non-terrestrial intelligence. The rigorous scientific skepticism that had initially greeted reports of anomalous behavior was yielding to the acknowledgement that humanity was experiencing something unprecedented in recorded history. And still, the structures proliferated. Each new formation augmented an increasingly sophisticated array of unknown technology that was operating in real time while humanity watched and pondered what lay ahead. Chapter 4. Coronal Mass Ejection Collision, First Contact or Cosmic Coincidence. September 24th and 25th, 2025, would be etched in memory as the pivotal moments when 3I Atlas transitioned from an enigmatic anomaly to undeniable confirmation that humanity was grappling with forces beyond their comprehension of natural phenomena. The catalyst for this profound shift was an event unprecedented in the annals of space science. A direct impact between an interstellar object and one of the most potent phenomena our Sun could generate, a coronal mass ejection. This explosive expulsion of billions of tons of charged particles from the Sun's outer atmosphere had erupted on September 19th with the destructive force of 1 trillion hydrogen bombs. Such occurrences are a regular feature of the Sun's natural cycle, propelling magnetized plasma into space at speeds exceeding 1,000 kilometers per second. NASA's Space Weather Prediction Center had been meticulously tracking this particular CME using its established monitoring procedures, and its sophisticated computational models indicated it would pass harmlessly through the void, missing all significant celestial bodies by substantial margins. The models had not accounted for 3I Atlas occupying the path of this cataclysmic event. Dr. Sandra Martinez, a heliophysicist at the National Solar Observatory specializing in solar-wind interactions, was monitoring the CME's progression when her instruments registered a reading that defied every principle of space physics she had studied throughout her career. The collision transpired precisely at 14 hours, 37 minutes Universal Coordinated Time on September 24th, when the leading edge of the coronal mass ejection slammed into 3I Atlas with an energy equivalent to the detonation of countless nuclear devices. A CME impact should either obliterate a small object or simply flow around it with minimal interaction, Martinez explained during an emergency scientific briefing that was convened rapidly as the data streamed in. What we observed was neither of these anticipated outcomes. What we witnessed challenges our fundamental understanding of how matter and energy interact in space. Rather than being vaporized or deflected by the immense forces, 3I Atlas appeared to actively manage the collision, channeling the colossal influx of charged particles through the enigmatic structures it had been developing in the preceding weeks. The object's luminosity surged by a factor of exactly 40, transforming it from a telescopic subject of interest into something momentarily visible to the naked eye from Earth, despite its vast distance. However, the truly remarkable aspect was not the dramatic increase in brightness. It was the controlled nature of the entire event. Spectroscopic analysis revealed that the energy absorption was highly selective, with different wavelengths of electromagnetic radiation being processed through distinct sections of the object's increasingly intricate structural arrangement. The phenomenon bore an uncanny resemblance to a sophisticated technological system engineered specifically to capture and utilize the chaotic energy of stellar disturbances. Dr. James Thompson, a plasma physicist at Princeton University who had dedicated decades to studying solar wind interactions with planetary magnetospheres, found himself questioning the foundational assumptions that had guided his entire scientific profession. The object appears to have actively managed the CME encounter, he documented in a classified report that was subsequently leaked to investigative journalists. This level of electromagnetic field manipulation and energy management necessitates technology that surpasses our current comprehension by orders of magnitude. The energy absorption process endured for precisely 4 hours and 17 minutes, during which 3I Atlas systematically converted the chaotic plasma storm into organized electromagnetic emissions. Radio telescopes across the globe detected structured signals emanating from the object during this period. These transmissions displayed unmistakable hallmarks of artificial intelligence and deliberate attempts at communication. The signals were unlike anything ever detected from space. They were not the random electromagnetic noise characteristic of most cosmic events, nor were they the simple mathematical sequences that scientists had long speculated might signify first contact. These were complex, multi-layered transmissions that seemed to contain vast quantities of information encoded in sophisticated protocols that human technology was incapable of deciphering. Dr. Alan Foster, director of the SETI Institute, who had dedicated his career to searching for precisely this type of signal, found himself in the surreal position of announcing that humanity had potentially received its first confirmed extraterrestrial communication. The structure of the signal exhibits mathematical precision, information density, and encoding sophistication that points to advanced technological intelligence, he stated during a press conference broadcast simultaneously across all major global news networks. We appear to be witnessing information transfer on a scale and level of sophistication that strongly suggests a non-terrestrial origin. The content of the transmissions remained frustratingly encrypted, resistant to every decoding methodology that Earth's most advanced computer systems could deploy. Cryptography experts from the National Security Agency, Britain's government communications headquarters, and analogous organizations worldwide were discreetly assigned to what became the highest priority code-breaking initiative since the Allied forces worked to decipher the Enigma cipher during World War II. The outcomes were both captivating and alarming. The signals appeared to be encrypted using mathematical principles that human cryptography had yet to discover or implement. Some analysts posited that the encryption methodology itself might constitute an integral part of the intended message, demonstrating the sender's technological prowess rather than attempting to conceal specific information. A crucial discovery was that the transmissions were not being broadcast indiscriminately into the cosmic void. Meticulous analysis of the signal propagation patterns revealed that they were being deliberately directed toward Earth, with certain transmission components seemingly targeting specific geographical zones, including major population centers and critical technological infrastructure. Dr. Maria Santos, a specialist in communication theory at the University of California, Berkeley, published an analysis that sent seismic waves through both the scientific community and global intelligence agencies. Her research suggested that 3i Atlas was not merely attempting to converse with humanity. It appeared to be undertaking a systematic technological survey of human civilization. The transmission patterns correlate strongly with global population density, electromagnetic signatures from major urban centers, and the geographical locations of our most advanced scientific installations, Santos wrote in a peer-reviewed but heavily redacted report. This appears to represent systematic reconnaissance and data acquisition rather than an attempt at amicable communication. The implications were profound and unsettling. If Santos's analysis was accurate, humanity was not merely observing alien technology within their solar system. They were being systematically cataloged and assessed by an intelligence that had deliberately sought them out across the immense gulfs of interstellar space. Governmental responses worldwide shifted dramatically from scientific fascination to urgent national security imperatives. Military installations were elevated to a heightened state of alert. Critical infrastructure systems were fortified against potential electromagnetic interference. Emergency protocols, previously existing only as theoretical exercises in classified planning documents, were quietly enacted. The public reaction was equally dramatic and far more observable. The CME collision and the subsequent signal transmissions had been witnessed by amateur astronomers and radio operators worldwide, making it impossible for authorities to control the flow of information or manage public perception of the events. An unprecedented volume of online traffic ensued as individuals shared real-time updates, technical analyses, and increasingly panicked speculation regarding alien intentions. The hashtag CME collision accumulated over 50 million posts within the initial 48 hours. Video platforms repeatedly crashed under the strain of users uploading their own observations and commentary. Online communities dedicated to tracking 3i Atlas exploded from thousands of members to millions within days of the collision. Every new piece of data was immediately dissected, analyzed, and debated by legions of citizen scientists who often matched or surpassed the analytical speed of official scientific institutions. Marcus Rodriguez, the amateur astronomer from Arizona whose early observations had garnered widespread attention, found himself inadvertently coordinating a global information network that included professional researchers, military personnel, and ordinary citizens, united by their determination to comprehend the unfolding events. "We are no longer mere passive observers," Rodriguez explained in a video broadcast that attracted over 8 million viewers. "We are active participants in the most critical investigation in human history, and we cannot rely solely on official channels to provide us with the complete truth about what is occurring." The democratization of 3I Atlas research created unparalleled challenges for authorities accustomed to controlling information dissemination during sensitive situations. Every significant development was documented and shared by multiple independent sources before official statements could be formulated and released. Government agencies found themselves reacting to public discoveries rather than leading the scientific inquiry. Religious communities worldwide struggled to reconcile the existence of an intelligent entity actively investigating human civilization with their theological frameworks. The CME absorption event had provided undeniable proof that 3I Atlas possessed technological capabilities far exceeding anything within human experience, compelling even the most skeptical observers to acknowledge they were confronting something unprecedented. Pope Francis issued a carefully worded statement urging calm contemplation and emphasizing that divine creation encompasses infinite possibilities beyond human comprehension. Other religious leaders found themselves grappling with doctrinal questions that had never been seriously contemplated by theological scholarship. The energy management capabilities demonstrated during the CME collision raised disturbing questions about the object's potential military applications. If 3I Atlas could systematically harvest and redirect the energy of a coronal mass ejection, what other forms of energy manipulation might it be capable of performing? Military strategists globally began modeling scenarios involving technology that could weaponize stellar phenomena or manipulate electromagnetic fields on planetary scales. The implications for national defense were staggering, rendering traditional military capabilities potentially obsolete in the face of such advanced technology. Dr. Eliza Park, the MIT systems engineer who had been analyzing 3I Atlas's structural advancements, published a supplementary report focusing specifically on the energy management systems revealed during the CME encounter. Her analysis suggested that the object had exhibited capabilities that violated several presumed limitations of engineering physics. The selective energy absorption, real-time electromagnetic field manipulation, and coordinated system response indicate technological capabilities that approach what we might consider fundamental physical limits, Park wrote in language that read more like a threat assessment than an academic paper. These capabilities suggest engineering principles and energy manipulation technologies that exceed our current understanding by potentially centuries. The international scientific community found itself struggling to maintain traditional peer review processes in the face of rapidly evolving developments that seemed to outpace conventional academic publishing timelines. Emergency protocols were established for sharing critical data, but the sheer volume and significance of new observations strained collaborative frameworks designed for far more routine research scenarios. Space agencies worldwide quietly began repositioning satellites and deep space monitoring equipment to maximize observation capabilities for 3I Atlas's continued approach. The object's demonstration of active technological capabilities had transformed it from a scientific curiosity into a potential threat requiring continuous monitoring. The CME collision had also unveiled something else that troubled analysts examining the event data. The energy absorption process appeared to have enhanced 3I Atlas's technological capacities rather than simply providing power for existing systems. New structural formations had emerged during and immediately after the collision, suggesting that the object was utilizing harvested stellar energy to expand its operational scope. Amateur radio operators reported detecting entirely new categories of signals following the CME encounter, transmission types that had not existed in their monitoring data prior to the collision. The signals suggested that 3I Atlas had activated additional systems or capabilities that had previously remained dormant. The timing of the collision raised further questions that made some observers deeply uneasy. The CME that impacted 3I Atlas had been a relatively routine solar event, yet the object's response suggested it had been prepared for precisely such an encounter. The systematic nature of the energy harvesting process implied advanced knowledge of solar weather patterns and deliberate positioning to intercept the coronal mass ejection. If 3I Atlas had intentionally positioned itself to encounter the CME, the implications were staggering. It would suggest that the alien intelligence possessed detailed knowledge of solar behavior and had planned its trajectory to capitalize on stellar energy sources for its own technological needs. The collision event had fundamentally altered the discourse surrounding 3I Atlas, shifting it from speculation about its nature to urgent inquiries regarding its intentions and capabilities. The object had demonstrated technological sophistication that surpassed human engineering by unknown margins, and it was actively employing that technology to investigate human civilization. As September concluded and October commenced, 3I Atlas continued its relentless approach toward the inner solar system, now unequivocally revealed as something far more complex and potentially perilous than anyone had initially conceived. The CME collision had stripped away any lingering possibility that the object was natural in origin, leaving humanity to confront the reality that they were being visited and studied by an intelligence whose capabilities and intentions remained entirely obscure. Chapter 5: Impossible Mass. A 33 billion-ton nightmare. Dr. Richard Kett had spent 3 sleepless nights performing calculations that should have been straightforward but were yielding results that defied everything astronomers believed they understood about celestial mechanics. Working in conjunction with Avi Loeb and Peter Vase, the South African astronomer was analyzing 4 months of positional data for 3I Atlas when they uncovered something that would compel the scientific community to confront an improbable reality. The object was not adhering to the trajectory it was expected to follow. This was not a matter of precise navigation, which had already perplexed researchers. This was about fundamental physics. When a celestial body traverses the cosmic expanse, it is subject to the pull of gravitational fields, the gentle push of solar particle streams, and any gases it might expel from its own surface. These influences orchestrate subtle yet detectable alterations in its path, which are then utilized by astronomers to ascertain its mass, constituent materials, and internal makeup. However, the object designated 3I Atlas demonstrated an apparent immunity to the forces that should have governed its celestial journey. Dr. Kenji Klo, speaking at a press conference that would later be recognized as the pivotal moment the mystery of 3I Atlas veered into the undeniably inexplicable, revealed that their team had meticulously analyzed 4,222 individual positional readings gathered from 227 observatories across the globe. This comprehensive dataset, spanning 4.5 months of continuous observation, offered an unparalleled degree of precision in tracking the object's orbital path. The ensuing analysis unearthed a phenomenon that fundamentally contradicted established principles of cosmic mechanics. Despite undeniable evidence of substantial outgassing, the expulsion of material that should have generated significant propulsive forces akin to a rocket, 3I Atlas exhibited no discernible deviation from a trajectory dictated solely by gravity. The upper bound for any non-gravitational acceleration was less than the inherent measurement uncertainty of the instruments themselves, creating a scientific paradox. The James Webb Space Telescope had recorded the object shedding approximately 150 kilograms of material per second, ejected at speeds reaching 440 meters per second. In accordance with Newton's foundational laws of motion, this loss of mass should have irrevocably altered 3I Atlas's course by a margin readily observable. Yet, the object persisted on its path as if utterly unaffected. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, a specialist in celestial mechanics at the European Space Agency, found herself compelled to reconcile observations with mathematical principles that defied conventional physics. If an object is losing mass at the rate we're witnessing, and that mass is being expelled in non-uniform patterns, she stated during an urgent assembly of the International Astronomical Union, then the fundamental principle of conservation of momentum dictates that its trajectory must change. The absence of such alterations implies either a profound flaw in our understanding of physical laws or the observation of technology capable of circumventing these very laws. The ramifications were immense. To remain unmoved by forces that should have substantially perturbed its trajectory, 3I Atlas would necessitate a mass far exceeding any plausible estimation based on its observable dimensions and presumed composition. The calculations, though straightforward, led to a conclusion that was exceedingly difficult to accept. The minimum mass required to account for its trajectory stability was estimated at 33 billion tons. To contextualize this figure, it was comparable to the mass of a small moon compacted into an object with a maximum diameter of 5.5 kilometers. The required density approached that of neutron stars, celestial bodies so compressed that a mere teaspoonful of their material would weigh as much as an entire mountain. However, material characteristic of neutron stars could not exist under the temperature and pressure conditions prevalent in interplanetary space. Dr. James Mitchell, a materials physicist at MIT specializing in extreme matter states, was enlisted to determine if any known substances could account for such extraordinary density. His assessment, completed over a feverish 72-hour period, concluded that no naturally occurring substance could sustain such compression outside the dense core of a collapsed star. We are observing density values that necessitate either the existence of exotic matter states yet to be discovered or internal structural engineering that vastly surpasses our current technological capabilities by many orders of magnitude, Mitchell reported in his meticulously prepared yet hastily compiled analysis. The ratio of mass to volume suggests an internal configuration that approaches the theoretical limits of matter organization. The calculation of 33 billion tons triggered a crisis that extended well beyond the field of astronomy. If 3I Atlas indeed possessed such immense mass, its gravitational influence on other bodies within the solar system should have been readily detectable by now. The trajectories of spacecraft should have exhibited deviations, and the orbits of nearby asteroids should have shown perturbations. However, careful scrutiny of tracking data revealed no such effects. This led to an even more disquieting possibility: that 3I Atlas was somehow concealing or actively controlling its gravitational signature, thereby demonstrating technology capable of manipulating one of nature's fundamental forces. The implications for physics and engineering were revolutionary, but the implications for global security were profoundly alarming. Dr. Sarah Kim, a Caltech astrophysicist who had become a prominent advocate for taking the 3I Atlas phenomenon seriously, published a detailed analysis of what controlled gravity technology might signify. Her paper, expedited for publication due to the pressing nature of the situation, outlined scenarios that caused considerable unease among defense analysts. Gravitational manipulation technology would represent the ultimate culmination of engineering prowess, Kim wrote, employing language that was both scientifically precise and foreboding. An intelligence possessing the ability to control gravitational fields could reshape matter at the atomic level, alter planetary orbits, and harness energy sources dwarfing anything within our current comprehension. The revelation of the object's immense mass prompted immediate responses from space agencies and military organizations worldwide. If 3I Atlas truly embodied exotic matter engineering, then every assumption regarding technological limitations and defensive capacities required urgent reassessment. NASA discreetly initiated deep space monitoring protocols that had, mere weeks prior, been confined to theoretical exercises. The European Space Agency's Planetary Defense Coordination Office, initially established to track potentially hazardous asteroids, suddenly found itself confronting an entity that might pose threats beyond the scope of any conventional defense system. The European Space Agency convened an emergency session of its Space Situational Awareness Program, bringing together leading experts in gravitational physics, material science, and theoretical engineering. While the classified outcomes of this meeting were never publicly disclosed, leaked documents suggested that European scientists were developing contingency plans for interacting with technology that might be millennia ahead of human capabilities. Military strategists globally began modeling scenarios that challenged fundamental assumptions about warfare and defense. An object capable of manipulating its gravitational signature could potentially alter satellite orbits, disrupt communication networks, or even influence tidal forces on a planetary scale. Conventional notions of deterrence and defense became irrelevant when faced with such an unprecedented capability. The public reaction to the mass revelation was swift and intense, igniting widespread discussions about gravity manipulation technology and exotic matter engineering. Concepts previously relegated to science fiction suddenly appeared within the realm of tangible possibility, fueling extensive speculation about the future of human civilization. Amateur astronomers and citizen scientists commenced their own validation efforts, utilizing publicly accessible tracking data to confirm the trajectory analyses that had led to the 33 billion ton conclusion. Numerous independent calculations corroborated the professional findings, fostering a consensus that transcended institutional affiliations. Dr. Lisa Park, an MIT systems engineer whose prior research had focused on 3I Atlas's structural evolution, published a subsequent study examining the engineering prerequisites for containing exotic matter. Her analysis indicated that the internal architecture necessary to maintain such extreme density would itself constitute technology far beyond present human capacities. Containing exotic matter necessitates electromagnetic field control, quantum state manipulation, and structural engineering at scales ranging from the subatomic to the macroscopic, Park detailed in her comprehensive technical assessment. The integration of these technologies into a stable, functional system suggests engineering capabilities that approach the theoretical limits of what is physically achievable. The implications extended beyond mere technological superiority. If 3I Atlas represented engineering that pushed the boundaries of physical law, its creators had achieved a state of near absolute technological mastery. The disparity between human capabilities in such advancement would be measured not in centuries, but in a fundamental divergence in the understanding of reality itself. Religious communities across the globe grappled with theological ramifications unforeseen by traditional doctrines. The demonstration of technology capable of manipulating fundamental forces raised profound questions about the nature of creation itself. Some religious leaders interpreted such abilities as evidence of divine intervention, while others struggled to reconcile seemingly omnipotent technological power with established concepts of divine authority. The Vatican issued a carefully calibrated statement acknowledging that divine creation encompasses possibilities beyond human comprehension, while concurrently emphasizing that spiritual authority supersedes technological capability. Other religious organizations found themselves formulating entirely new theological frameworks to address the implications of encountering an intelligence possessing near God-like technological faculties. Intelligence agencies face the daunting challenge of assessing threats from technology that surpassed every model developed for evaluating foreign capabilities. Traditional intelligence gathering methods became largely ineffective when dealing with capabilities that might encompass gravitational manipulation, exotic matter engineering, and potentially other technologies yet to be discovered by humanity. The 33 billion ton revelation also introduced disturbing inquiries regarding 3I Atlas's energy demands. Sustaining such extraordinary density, controlling its gravitational signature, and operating the sophisticated technological systems observed would necessitate energy sources far beyond anything in human experience. Dr. Robert Chen, an energy systems specialist at Caltech who had been modeling the power requirements for 3I Atlas's observed capabilities, published calculations that were both fascinating and alarming. His analysis suggested that the object might be drawing energy directly from the quantum vacuum, tapping into the fundamental energy that underpins all matter and energy. The energy density required to maintain the observed capabilities exceeds anything we can generate or even conceive of generating, Chen stated in his technical assessment. The object appears to be accessing energy sources that we can barely describe theoretically, let alone harness practically. The hypothesis of quantum vacuum energy introduced an additional layer of impossibility to the 3I Atlas enigma. If the object could extract energy from empty space itself, then it possessed technology capable of operating indefinitely without external fuel sources, rendering it essentially immortal from an engineering perspective. The mass analysis had also unveiled another detail that troubled researchers examining the data. The trajectory calculations indicated that 3I Atlas's extraordinary density was not uniformly distributed throughout its structure. Instead, the mass appeared to be concentrated in specific regions that corresponded to the locations where new technological structures had been developing. This pattern suggested that the object was actively redistributing its exotic matter to support different functions as needed, implying real-time control over matter states that approach the manipulation of reality itself at a fundamental level. Amateur radio operators monitoring 3I Atlas reported detecting novel signal types following the release of the mass analysis. The transmissions appeared to be increasing in both frequency and complexity, as if the object were responding to humanity's recognition of its technological sophistication. The signals exhibited characteristics that some analysts interpreted as systematic testing patterns, probing various communication protocols and frequency bands. The temporal correlation with the mass revelation suggested that 3I Atlas was cognizant of human analytical capabilities and was adjusting its behavior accordingly, raising the disconcerting possibility that the object was not only studying human civilization but was actively monitoring human scientific progress and understanding. The implications for information security and strategic planning were profound. The 33-billion-ton nightmare had transformed 3I Atlas from a mysterious visitor into irrefutable evidence that humanity was confronting an intelligence with technological capabilities bordering on omnipotence. The object represented engineering that approached the theoretical limits of what physics allowed, operated using energy sources that humans could barely comprehend, and demonstrated an awareness of human analytical capabilities. As October progressed and 3I Atlas continued its approach toward the inner solar system, each new observation contributed to an ever clearer picture of technological supremacy that rendered human capabilities seemingly primitive by comparison. The mass revelation had compelled humanity to confront the possibility that they were being assessed by an intelligence whose capabilities were so advanced that the distinction between technology and natural law had become blurred. Chapter 6: Solar Blackout. The October Disappearance. October 29, 2025, marked the commencement of what astronomers would subsequently refer to as the most frustrating and terrifying period in the annals of space observation. On this date, 3I Atlas reached its perihelion, its closest proximity to the Sun, and in doing so, vanished behind our star's blinding disk for nearly 6 weeks. The timing could not have been more opportune for an intelligence that preferred to operate without human oversight. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, of the Space Telescope Science Institute, had been anticipating this moment with dread since the initial trajectory calculations confirmed 3I Atlas's path through the solar system. "We are about to lose visual contact with the most significant object ever detected in space," she explained during what would be the final press briefing prior to the blackout period's commencement. "For the next month and a half, we will be entirely blind to any activities 3I Atlas might undertake behind the Sun." The astronomical community had experienced solar conjunctions previously. Planets regularly pass behind the Sun from Earth's vantage point, temporarily disappearing from view until they re-emerge on the opposite side. Mars, Venus, and even Mercury routinely vanish for weeks at a time during these predictable celestial alignments. However, 3I Atlas was distinct. The preceding months of observation had revealed an entity that was actively transforming, developing new structures, and exhibiting technological capabilities that suggested it was far more than a passive visitor to the solar system. The timing of the solar blackout raised unsettling questions about deliberate planning. Avi's mothership theory had specifically identified the perihelion passage as the optimal window for conducting covert operations. According to his calculations, any probes or secondary craft deployed during this period would be undetectable from Earth, obscured by the overwhelming electromagnetic interference generated by the Sun's corona. Dr. Sarah Kim, at Caltech, had been working tirelessly to model what 3I Atlas might accomplish during its hidden transit. Her analysis presented scenarios that kept space agencies and intelligence organizations awake at night. "The solar blackout offers perfect operational cover," she wrote in a classified report that was later leaked to investigative journalists. "Any technological deployment, trajectory alteration, or reconnaissance activity conducted during this period would be completely invisible to Earth-based observation." The implications were staggering. If 3I Atlas was indeed an artificial construct with potentially hostile intentions, the ensuing 6 weeks would provide an ideal window for preparing whatever actions its controllers might be planning. Conversely, if the object represented a peaceful scientific mission, the blackout period might be when it conducted its most intensive data collection and analysis. NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office found itself in the unprecedented position of preparing for threats that no existing protocol had ever envisioned. Traditional asteroid tracking relied on continuous observation to predict future positions and assess collision risks. However, 3I Atlas represented something far more complex than a simple impact threat. It was an intelligent system that might emerge from the solar blackout with drastically altered capabilities or objectives. The space agency discreetly activated deep space monitoring networks developed for tracking military satellites and debris. Radio telescopes worldwide were reconfigured to detect any signals that might circumvent the Sun's intense electromagnetic interference. Even the most optimistic projections suggested that these efforts would detect only the most powerful transmissions, leaving the majority of 3I Atlas's potential activities completely unobservable. The United States Space Force took the extraordinary step of repositioning several of its deep space monitoring satellites in an attempt to maintain some observational capacity during the blackout. These maneuvers necessitated the expenditure of precious fuel reserves and would significantly shorten the operational lifespans of the affected spacecraft, but the potential intelligence value was deemed commensurate with the sacrifice. Russia's space agency, Roscosmos, made similar preparations, though their efforts remained largely classified. Leaked communications indicated that Russian scientists were particularly concerned about the possibility that 3I Atlas might emerge from its solar passage with altered trajectory parameters. Such changes could only be achieved through active propulsion, confirming beyond any doubt that the object was under intelligent control. Continuing their unprecedented transparency regarding 3I Atlas observations, the European Space Agency shared detailed predictions about when the object should become visible again if it maintained its current trajectory. These calculations provided a timeline that the international community could use to ascertain whether the object had made any course corrections during its obscured passage. Amateur astronomers worldwide prepared for what would be the most frustrating period in their collective experience. For months, they had contributed crucial observations and analyses to the understanding of 3I Atlas. Suddenly, they would be relegated to helpless anticipation while the most significant object in human history conducted unknown activities beyond their ability to observe. Marcus Rodriguez, whose Arizona Observatory had become a hub for citizen science endeavors, organized a global network to monitor the sun's corona for any unusual activity that might indicate 3I Atlas's presence. "We may not be able to see the object directly," he explained in a video that garnered over 12 million viewers, "but we might be able to detect secondary effects if it is actively interacting with the solar environment." The network established by Rodriguez comprised thousands of amateur astronomers across 6 continents, all coordinating their observations in an effort to maintain some awareness of 3I Atlas's activities. Solar observation necessitates specialized equipment and strict safety protocols, but the dedication of the amateur community resulted in an unprecedented monitoring effort. Professional solar physicists found themselves collaborating with amateur observers who had no prior experience studying the sun, all united by the profound implications of the 3I Atlas crisis. Lisa Santos from the National Solar Observatory announced that her institution was receiving an unprecedented volume of information regarding solar activity, more than at any point in its history. A significant portion of this data originated from observers who had shifted their focus from the vastness of deep space to our closest star. The impending blackout had a palpable psychological effect rippling through human society. Social media platforms experienced a surge in conversations centered on what the object designated 3II Atlas might be engaged in during its obscured phase. Support groups for anxiety saw their membership climb as individuals grappled with the disquiet of not understanding events unfolding within their own solar system. Faith communities made preparations for a period of deep spiritual introspection and prayer. Many spiritual leaders viewed the solar blackout as a trial of faith, a time when humanity would need to rely on divine guidance while remaining ignorant of developments that could shape their species' future. Special prayer services were organized globally across churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples. Financial markets endured extreme fluctuations as investors attempted to factor in possibilities ranging from peaceful interaction to an existential crisis. Technology firms witnessed dramatic shifts in their valuations, driven by speculation about potential knowledge exchange opportunities. Defense contractors experienced similar volatility as analysts debated the efficacy of conventional weaponry against technology that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Governmental bodies faced the challenge of maintaining public order during a time when official information would be virtually non-existent. Contingency measures were implemented to manage potential civil unrest stemming from rumors, speculation, or panic concerning 3I Atlas's concealed activities. Communication strategies were devised to address the inevitable proliferation of conspiracy theories that would flourish in the absence of concrete evidence. The timing of the solar blackout presented additional complexities for the academic world. Research initiatives hastily launched to study 3II Atlas would be forced into dormancy just as they were beginning to yield significant findings. Funding bodies struggled to sustain support for investigations that might become obsolete depending on the object's accomplishments during its unobservable period. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the principal investigator of the study that initially documented 3I Atlas's unusual trajectory, found herself in the peculiar situation of having successfully predicted humanity's first encounter with extraterrestrial intelligence, yet being unable to witness what might be the most critical stage of that encounter. "We have spent months documenting that this object exhibits intelligent behavior," she stated during her last press conference before the blackout. "Now we must wait and see what that intelligence chooses to do when it knows we cannot observe." The international space community established groundbreaking information sharing protocols for the blackout period. Any detected anomaly, regardless of its perceived significance or ambiguity, would be immediately disseminated to all participating entities. This collaboration represented a level of openness previously unimaginable during the Cold War era. However, the sheer magnitude of the three-eyed object's presence necessitated that traditional rivals cooperate. Intelligence agencies prepared for what some analysts termed the most extended period of surveillance darkness in history. Satellite arrays designed to track terrestrial threats suddenly appeared insufficient when faced with the prospect of alien technology operating in Earth's immediate cosmic vicinity. New protocols were developed for strategic planning when fundamental assumptions regarding technological capabilities could be overturned overnight. The solar blackout also ignited concerning questions about information warfare and psychological operations. If 3-2 Atlas represented hostile intelligence, its invisible period could have been deliberately engineered to maximize anxiety and uncertainty among global populations. The object's creators would undoubtedly understand that 6 weeks of complete uncertainty would strain human institutions and societal structures in ways that direct confrontation might not. Conversely, if 3-2 Atlas harbored peaceful intentions, the blackout might be an unfortunate byproduct of orbital mechanics rather than deliberate strategy. Solar conjunctions are predictable astronomical phenomena that occur irrespective of any intelligence's preferences. The apparent strategic timing could be coincidental rather than intentional. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford, who had been modeling three-eyed Atlas's behavior using game theory and strategic analysis, published a paper examining the various scenarios the blackout period might entail. His analysis suggested that the information warfare implications of the timing were so substantial that its accidental nature was improbable. An advanced intelligence planning contact with a less developed civilization would grasp the psychological impact of periods of uncertainty and invisibility, Kim wrote in his strategic assessment. The solar blackout offers maximum leverage for psychological influence while safeguarding operational security for any activities being undertaken. The amateur radio community prepared for extensive monitoring during the blackout. While visual observation would be impossible, radio signals might still be detectable if 3-2 Atlas chose to transmit during its passage behind the sun. Specialized listening protocols were established to detect even the faintest signals that might indicate ongoing activity. Some radio operators reported detecting unusual background patterns in the days leading up to the solar conjunction, suggesting that 3-2 Atlas might be testing its communication systems before disappearing from view. The signals were too faint and ambiguous for definitive analysis, but their timing raised the possibility that the object was preparing for a phase of active yet concealed operations. The final observations of 3-2 Atlas before it vanished behind the sun revealed continued structural development and apparent technological enhancements. The object that would re-emerge from the blackout period might be considerably different from the one that entered it. Having utilized the hidden weeks to finalize any construction or modification projects it had been undertaking, amateur astronomers captured the last visible images of three-eyed Atlas as it approached the sun's corona, documenting an object that had undergone a dramatic transformation since its initial detection months prior. The growing structures and technological upgrades were clearly discernible in high-resolution photography, providing a benchmark for comparison when the object eventually reappeared. Psychological preparation for the blackout included public awareness campaigns detailing the nature of solar conjunctions and the observational limitations they imposed on Earth-based systems. Scientific organizations worked to manage public expectations and mitigate panic by explaining that the disappearance was temporary and predictable, even if the object's activities during that time remained unknown. However, no amount of education could fully assuage the apprehension of knowing that the most significant object in human history was about to spend 6 weeks engaged in undisclosed activities beyond human sight. The solar blackout represented humanity's inaugural experience with imposed ignorance concerning events that could determine its species' future. As October 29th approached and 3-2 Atlas prepared to disappear behind the sun, the global community braced for a period of uncertainty unparalleled in recorded history. The ensuing 6 weeks would test humanity's capacity to sustain social harmony and rational decision-making while confronting the ultimate unknown. Chapter 7. Trajectory Truth. the 0.005% coincidence. The mathematics were unyielding, and Dr. James Chen understood that numbers did not deceive, even when they conveyed narratives that human minds found difficult to accept. As the primary trajectory analyst for the MIT team that had been monitoring 3-2 Atlas since its discovery, Chen had dedicated countless hours to verifying calculations that pointed toward a conclusion so improbable it challenged the very notion of coincidence. 3-2 Atlas was not merely traversing the solar system, it was conducting what could only be described as a meticulously planned reconnaissance mission, approaching Venus, Mars, and Jupiter with navigational precision that surpassed anything human space agencies had ever achieved. The statistical analysis was damningly clear. Chen had calculated the probability that any interstellar object arriving by chance would approach these three planetary targets with the accuracy demonstrated by 3-2 Atlas. The calculations involved complex orbital mechanics, gravitational interactions, and the vast three-dimensional expanse through which such an object might enter the solar system. We are looking at a combined probability of approximately 0.005%, Chen explained during a classified briefing that had been hastily arranged for senior officials from NASA, the Department of Defense, and the National Science Foundation. To put this into perspective, you are more likely to be struck by lightning while simultaneously winning 3 separate lotteries than to observe such precise planetary approaches occurring by random chance. The trajectory analysis revealed a level of planning sophistication that suggested an intimate understanding of solar system dynamics. 3-2 Atlas was slated to pass Venus at a distance of 0.2 of an astronomical unit on October 15th, offering optimal conditions for surface mapping and atmospheric analysis. The Mars encounter on October 3rd would bring the object to within 1/10.19 of an astronomical unit, close enough for detailed geological surveys while avoiding gravitational capture. The Jupiter flyby, scheduled for March 16th of the following year, demonstrated perhaps the most advanced aspect of the entire trajectory. The approach distance of 0.336 astronomical units would permit comprehensive study of the gas giant's atmospheric dynamics, magnetic field interactions, and moon systems, while simultaneously leveraging Jupiter's immense gravitational field to modify the object's outward trajectory for optimal solar system exit velocity. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, NASA's Director of Mission Planning, who had overseen trajectory design for numerous robotic space missions, found herself examining 3-2 Atlas's path with professional admiration and growing apprehension. This represents mission planning at a level that exceeds our best capabilities, she admitted during internal NASA discussions that were later divulged to congressional investigators. The energy efficiency, the optimization of scientific return, and the utilization of gravitational assists demonstrate planning sophistication that suggests either incredible fortune or intentional design. The precision was not confined to the major planetary encounters. In-depth analysis revealed that 3-2 Atlas's trajectory would also provide excellent observation opportunities for the asteroid belt, the Kuiper Belt objects, and various smaller bodies throughout the solar system. The path maximized scientific data acquisition while minimizing energy expenditure and the risk of detection. However, perhaps the most unsettling aspect was the approach vector analysis. Unlike typical interstellar objects that entered the solar system from essentially random directions, 3-2 Atlas had arrived from the direction of Sagittarius, directly towards the galactic center, where the density of background stars would have made early detection exceptionally difficult. Dr. Maria Santos, a stellar dynamics expert at the University of California, Berkeley, had modeled the visibility conditions for objects approaching from different directions. Her analysis indicated that 3-2 Atlas had selected the approach path that would minimize its detection window while maximizing its observation time once it was identified. An object approaching from the Sagittarius direction remains effectively invisible until it reaches the orbit of Jupiter, Santos wrote in her comprehensive visibility analysis. This approach vector provides only a few months of observation time before solar conjunction, creating maximum uncertainty about the object's intentions and capabilities. The timing analysis was equally concerning. 3-2 Atlas had been timed to arrive during a period of minimal solar activity, thus avoiding the intense radiation and particle bombardment that characterized solar maximum conditions. The approach also coincided with favorable planetary alignments that optimized the scientific value of each encounter. Chen's team had modeled thousands of potential approach scenarios, testing different arrival times, vectors, and trajectories to determine which combinations would offer optimal reconnaissance opportunities. Their analysis confirmed that 3-2 Atlas had followed what amounted to the perfect path for studying human civilization while minimizing detection and observation time. The navigational precision extended to minute details that revealed even greater planning sophistication. The object's rotation period had been meticulously chosen to optimize solar panel efficiency, assuming it utilized solar power, while its structural orientation maximized gravitational stability during high acceleration maneuvers. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford, who had been analyzing 3-2 Atlas using game theory and strategic planning models, published a paper that examined the trajectory from the perspective of intelligence gathering operations. His analysis suggested that the path demonstrated an awareness of operational security that surpassed most military reconnaissance missions. The trajectory exhibits characteristics of a meticulously planned intelligence operation, Kim wrote in his strategic assessment. The approach vector, timing, planetary encounter sequence, and solar conjunction timing all serve to maximize information gathering while minimizing target awareness and response time. The implications for human security were profound. If 3-2 Atlas represented hostile intelligence, its trajectory provided ideal conditions for assessing human technological capabilities while evading detection until it was too late for defensive responses. The object could complete its reconnaissance mission and vanish beyond human reach before effective countermeasures could be developed or deployed. Intelligence agencies globally had begun treating the trajectory analysis as a threat assessment rather than a mere scientific curiosity. The precision navigation demonstrated capabilities that significantly exceeded human technology, suggesting that 3-2 Atlas's creators possessed detailed knowledge of solar system dynamics and human space surveillance assets. The amateur astronomy community had conducted its own verification of the trajectory calculations, utilizing publicly available orbital data to corroborate the professional analysis. Multiple independent studies supported the conclusion that 3-2 Atlas was following an impossibly precise path through the solar system. Amateur astronomers like Marcus Rodriguez found themselves inadvertently participating in what amounted to a global intelligence analysis project. "We are no longer just tracking a space object," Rodriguez explained in one of his increasingly popular video updates. "We are documenting evidence of planning and intelligence that operates on scales we have never encountered before." The trajectory analysis had also revealed something that troubled researchers studying the object's behavior. The path optimization was not merely efficient, it was elegant. The gravitational interactions, timing sequences, and energy management demonstrated an aesthetic appreciation for orbital mechanics, suggesting an intelligence with a profound understanding of celestial dynamics. Dr. Jennifer Walsh at the Space Telescope Science Institute found herself drawing comparisons between 3-2 Atlas's trajectory and classical music compositions, noting the harmonic relationships between different orbital elements and the sophisticated orchestration of complex gravitational interactions to achieve maximum effect with minimal effort. "There is an artistic quality to this trajectory that goes beyond mere efficiency," Walsh observed during one of her increasingly philosophical presentations about the object. "We are witnessing navigation as an art form, demonstrating an intelligence that finds beauty in the mathematics of celestial mechanics." The artistic interpretation raised uncomfortable questions about the nature of the intelligence behind 3-2 Atlas. An entity capable of appreciating the aesthetic dimensions of orbital mechanics while conducting what appeared to be systematic reconnaissance represented a level of sophistication that challenged human assumptions about the relationship between intelligence, technology, and consciousness. With theological implications for an intelligence that demonstrated both technological supremacy and aesthetic sensibility. Some leaders interpreted the elegant trajectory as evidence of divine inspiration, while others expressed concern about the spiritual ramifications of encountering an intelligence that might transcend human understanding in all facets. The trajectory provided insights into 3-2 Atlas's likely origin and mission duration. Tracing the object's path through galactic space suggested a journey that could have potentially lasted millions of years, indicating either incredible patience or technology capable of maintaining operational status across geological timescales. Dr. Lisa Park at MIT had calculated the energy requirements for sustaining an active mission across such extended periods. Her analysis suggested that 3-2 Atlas must possess either self-repair capabilities approaching immortality or energy sources that could operate independently of external inputs for essentially unlimited durations. We are looking at engineering that treats million-year mission timelines as routine planning considerations, Park wrote in her technical assessment. This suggests technological maturity that approaches the theoretical limits of what is physically possible. The multi-million-year journey timeline highlighted the patience and persistence of 3-2 Atlas's creators. An intelligence willing to undertake reconnaissance missions across such timescales represented strategic thinking that dwarfed human planning horizons. The implications for comprehending alien motivations and intentions were sobering. Military strategists worldwide found themselves developing threat models for intelligence operating on million-year timelines while demonstrating technology that surpassed human capabilities by orders of magnitude. Traditional concepts of deterrence and defense became meaningless when confronting such vast disparities in technological capability and strategic patience. The trajectory precision had also revealed that 3-2 Atlas possessed detailed knowledge of human space surveillance capabilities and limitations. The object's approach path exploited gaps in Earth's detection networks while timing its arrival to minimize observation opportunities. This suggested that 3-2 Atlas's creators had conducted preliminary reconnaissance of human technological capabilities before initiating their main mission. The implications for surprise were profound, indicating that humanity might have been under observation for far longer than anyone had previously realized. Amateur radio operators monitoring 3-2 Atlas reported detecting transmission patterns that appeared to correlate with the object's approach to each planetary target. The signals suggested that the object was actively collecting and transmitting data as it conducted its precision reconnaissance mission. The convergence of its flight path, accuracy, and communication signals strongly suggested that 3-2 Atlas was engaged in deliberate intelligence acquisition, not random wandering. The celestial body seemed to be executing a pre-programmed data-gathering mission, meticulously planned beforehand. As the month of October advanced and 3-2 Atlas neared its carefully orchestrated rendezvous with Venus and Mars, its trajectory continued to yield evidence of an intellect operating by principles that defied humanity's grasp of planning, perseverance, and technological prowess. The infinitesimal probability, precisely 0.005%, could no longer be attributed to mere coincidence, compelling humankind to confront the stark reality. They were under systematic scrutiny by an intelligence whose capabilities and objectives remained entirely obscure, despite months of intense monitoring and analysis. Chapter 8. The Dark Forest Doctrine, an intellectual conflagration. The scientific community had historically prided itself on rational discourse and evidence-based argumentation. Yet the 3-2 Atlas conundrum was challenging these tenets in unforeseen ways. By the beginning of October 2025, what had started as a scholarly disagreement concerning an anomalous celestial object had escalated into something akin to intellectual combat, with reputations, funding, and fundamental belief systems at stake. Dr. Christopher Hayes, the esteemed chairperson of the International Astronomical Union's Commission on Interstellar Objects, found himself at the epicenter of a dispute that was polarizing the astronomical world into increasingly adversarial camps. On one side stood researchers adamant that 3-2 Atlas was a natural phenomenon explicable by established laws of physics and chemistry. Conversely, a growing assembly of scientists contended that the evidence unequivocally pointed to an artificial intelligence, possibly with malevolent intentions. The debate had been ignited by the release of several research papers exploring what scientists termed the dark forest hypothesis, as it pertained to 3-2 Atlas. This concept, popularized by the acclaimed Chinese science fiction author Liu Cixin, posited that advanced extraterrestrial civilizations might choose silence and obscurity to evade detection by potentially hostile entities. When applied to 3-2 Atlas, the theory painted a disconcerting portrayal of first contact as a perilous encounter rather than a promising opportunity. Dr. Adam Hibberd, a researcher at the Initiative for Interstellar Studies in London, was a co-author of one of the most contentious papers examining the dark forest implications of 3-2 Atlas's behavior. Collaborating with Adam Cray and Avive, Hibberd had analyzed the object's trajectory and timing from the vantage point of strategic surveillance rather than purely scientific exploration. The dark forest hypothesis postulates that any intelligence capable of traversing interstellar distances would approach unknown civilizations with extreme caution and potentially hostile intent. Hibberd articulated in the paper that would ultimately fracture the astronomical community. The behavioral patterns we observe in 3.2 are consistent with reconnaissance activities that precede either peaceful contact or preemptive elimination of potential threats. The paper detailed hypothetical scenarios that kept defense strategists awake at night. If 3.2 Atlas represented advanced reconnaissance for a civilization perceiving other intelligences as existential dangers, humanity might be undergoing an assessment for eradication rather than engagement. The object's methodical survey of celestial bodies and its evident technological sophistication could signify threat assessment rather than mere scientific inquiry. The academic reaction was swift and severe. Prominent astronomers from leading institutions issued joint statements denouncing what they characterized as irresponsible speculation that risked inciting public alarm over natural occurrences. The critique targeted not only the conclusions but also the researchers' willingness to disseminate such speculative analyses without definitive proof. Dr. Marker Thompson, NASA's chief scientist for solar system small bodies, emerged as the public face of the institutional opposition to dark forest theories. The assertion that 3.2 Atlas represents hostile alien intelligence is not substantiated by the available evidence, she declared during a press conference broadcast live across major news networks. Such conjecture erodes public trust in scientific methodology and responsible research. However, Thompson's measured response was undermined by leaked communications revealing that NASA had quietly initiated the development of contingency protocols for managing potential extraterrestrial contact scenarios. Internal documents indicated that the agency was taking dark forest possibilities seriously enough to commence preliminary planning for defensive measures. This leak instigated a fresh wave of controversy, prompting researchers to question the rationale behind institutional leaders publicly dismissing theories they were privately investigating. Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose initial trajectory analysis had first indicated artificial intelligence, found herself caught between conflicting pressures to either endorse or disassociate from increasingly dramatic hypotheses regarding 3.2 Atlas's intentions. The data suggests intelligence, but intelligence does not inherently imply hostility, Vasquez explained during one of her increasingly infrequent public appearances. We must differentiate between evidence-based conclusions and speculative scenarios, even when both point toward possibilities that challenge our fundamental assumptions about the cosmos. The academic battle lines were drawn not solely on the interpretation of evidence but also on profound questions concerning scientific accountability and public communication. Younger researchers, particularly those with less established careers, tended to advocate for an open exploration of all potential outcomes, including adversarial scenarios. Senior scientists, many bearing significant institutional responsibilities, favored more conservative approaches that emphasized uncertainty over definitive threat assessments. Dr. Sarah Kim at Caltech found herself occupying a mediating position that appeased neither extreme. Her analysis acknowledged that 3.2 Atlas exhibited technological capabilities far surpassing human achievements, while asserting that hostile intent was merely one among numerous plausible explanations for the object's conduct. We are confronting an intelligence that operates according to principles we do not comprehend, Kim wrote in her endeavor to bridge the widening academic chasm. Attributing human motivations such as hostility or benevolence to such an intelligence may be fundamentally misguided. We may be dealing with minds that operate on paradigms rendering our categories of friend and enemy meaningless. Kim's philosophical perspective garnered support from scholars in disciplines beyond traditional astronomy. Anthropologists, psychologists, and philosophers began contributing to the 3.2 Atlas discourse, introducing viewpoints that challenged ingrained assumptions about intelligence, communication, and motivation that had been taken for granted by astronomers. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley, possessing extensive expertise in both astronomy and cognitive science, approached the 3.2 Atlas enigma from the standpoint of contact linguistics and xenosociology. Her analysis suggested that human attempts to decipher alien motivations were likely destined for failure without a vastly improved comprehension of how non-human intelligence might function. We are attempting to comprehend minds that evolved under entirely dissimilar circumstances and may operate according to logical frameworks inaccessible to us, Santos wrote in her interdisciplinary analysis. The dark forest hypothesis presumes that alien intelligence would strategize regarding threats and opportunities in a manner akin to human military planning. This assumption might be entirely unfounded. The interdisciplinary viewpoint introduced additional complexity to the academic debate. yet offered little definitive clarification regarding 3.2 Atlas's true objectives. If human cognitive frameworks were insufficient for understanding alien intelligence, then both adversarial and benign interpretations could be equally devoid of meaning. Religious scholars entered the academic discourse, bringing theological perspectives that further complicated efforts to achieve consensus on the significance of 3.2 Atlas. Some theologians interpreted the object as a divine harbinger, while others viewed it as a test of human faith and wisdom in the face of cosmic uncertainty. The Vatican's Pontifical Academy of Sciences issued a carefully formulated statement, acknowledging the possibility of intelligences beyond human comprehension existing in the universe, while underscoring that divine authority superseded any technological prowess such intelligences might possess. Other religious organizations struggled to devise theological frameworks adequate for addressing potential contact with alien life. The intellectual warfare extended beyond academic journals into social media platforms, where researchers found themselves defending not only their scientific conclusions but also their professional competence and personal motivations. Twitter exchanges escalated into heated debates between proponents of differing theories, with some becoming so acrimonious that university administrators felt compelled to issue directives on appropriate professional conduct. The public observed these academic confrontations with a mixture of fascination and escalating apprehension. Social media algorithms amplified the most sensational exchanges, frequently framing scientific disagreements as evidence that experts were no more knowledgeable than ordinary citizens. This democratization of the discourse further eroded institutional authority while intensifying public anxiety surrounding 3.2 Atlas. Scientists found themselves compelled to choose sides in the academic conflict, some supporting researchers advocating for caution, while others rallied behind those arguing for open discussion of all possibilities, including adversarial scenarios. Online forums dedicated to 3.2 Atlas transformed into battlegrounds where technical analysis mingled with philosophical debates concerning humanity's appropriate response to cosmic ambiguity. The dark forest theory gained additional credence when military strategists began publishing their own assessments of 3.2 Atlas as a potential security threat. These analyses, while deliberately avoiding definitive conclusions, acknowledged that the object's demonstrated capabilities constituted potential dangers that necessitated serious contingency planning. Colonel Janet Rodriguez, a strategic analyst at the Department of Defense specializing in emerging technological threats, published a declassified assessment that treated 3.2 Atlas as an intelligence gathering platform, irrespective of its ultimate objectives. Her analysis focused on capabilities rather than motivations, arguing that this distinction was inconsequential for defense planning purposes. Whether 3.2 Atlas represents peaceful scientific exploration or hostile reconnaissance, its demonstrated technological capacities surpass our defensive systems by orders of magnitude, Rodriguez wrote in her military assessment. Prudent security planning requires preparation for scenarios in which such capabilities might be deployed against human interests. The military perspective injected a new sense of urgency into the academic debate, while highlighting the practical ramifications of various theoretical frameworks. If 3.2 Atlas posed a potential threat, then academic disagreement regarding its nature transcended a mere scholarly exercise. It was potentially a matter of species survival. Intelligence agencies globally began enlisting academic experts to assist with classified analytical efforts, thereby establishing a parallel research network operating outside traditional peer review processes. This compartmentalization of research further fractured the academic community while diminishing the volume of information available for public scrutiny. The enlistment of scientists into classified programs presented ethical quandaries for researchers who found themselves in possession of information they could neither share with colleagues nor the public. Some scientists declined participation in classified analyses, preferring to retain their capacity for open scientific dialogue. Others felt a moral obligation to contribute their expertise to national security initiatives, irrespective of the impact on their academic freedom. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford found himself navigating competing obligations when approached to participate in a classified assessment of 3.2 Atlas's strategic implications. His decision to refuse the invitation, while continuing to publish openly about the object's characteristics, made him a target for both institutional pressure and public scrutiny. Science functions most effectively when information flows freely, and conclusions can be challenged through open debate, Kim explained during a controversial interview in which he criticized the trend toward classifying 3.2 Atlas research. The moment we begin concealing our analyses behind security clearances, we forfeit our ability to distinguish between evidence-based conclusions and conjecture driven by fear. Kim's stance garnered support from scientists concerned about the militarization of 3.2 Atlas research, but it also drew criticism from researchers who argued that certain aspects of the situation were too sensitive for public discourse. The dispute underscored fundamental tensions between scientific transparency and national security concerns, lacking straightforward resolutions. The academic conflict over 3.2 Atlas's interpretation mirrored deeper philosophical divisions regarding how science should engage with phenomena that challenged established paradigms. Traditional scientific methodology necessitated extensive verification and peer review prior to accepting revolutionary conclusions. However, 3.2 Atlas was evolving too rapidly to conform to conventional analytical timelines. Some researchers advocated for accelerated publication and review procedures that could keep pace with the object's changing attributes, while others maintained that upholding rigorous standards was paramount over expediency. The tension between thoroughness and urgency imposed additional strain within the academic community. The dark forest hypothesis had transmuted the academic discussion of 3.2 Atlas from mere scientific curiosity into an existential evaluation with profound implications for humanity's future. Whether the object represented an opportunity or a threat remained uncertain, but the intensity of the academic debate reflected the magnitude of what humanity might be confronting. As it continued its trajectory towards solar conjunction, the academic community remained divided between competing interpretations of evidence that all agreed was unprecedented in the annals of astronomy. The war of ideas would persist, irrespective of what the object eventually revealed about its true nature and intentions. Chapter 9. Mars Flyby Intel, October 3rd. Revelations. October 3rd, 2025, would be the inaugural instance in human history where multiple spacecraft from disparate nations simultaneously documented an interstellar visitor apparently engaged in systematic reconnaissance of another planet. As 3.2 Atlas approached Mars at its preordained separation of 0.19 astronomical units, an unparalleled international consortium of robotic observers stood ready to record any revelations the enigmatic object might offer concerning its actual capabilities and intentions. Dr. Sarah Chan, Mission Operations Director for the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, found herself coordinating the most intricate multi-spacecraft observation campaign ever undertaken. We have 6 active missions orbiting Mars, 2 surface rovers, and deep space telescopes, all intently focused on a single object for a 12-hour observation window, she explained during a pre-flyby briefing attended by representatives from NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, and the China National Space Administration. This represents our optimal opportunity to comprehend 3.2 Atlas's technological capacities while it is actively involved in planetary reconnaissance. The European Space Agency's Mars Express orbiter had been repositioned specifically to maximize its observational opportunities during the flyby. The spacecraft's high-resolution stereo camera and various spectrometers were configured to capture detailed imagery and compositional data of 3.2 Atlas's perplexing surface structures. Dr. Angela Martinez, the mission's principal investigator, had worked 18-hour days devising observation sequences intended to yield unprecedented close-range data on the object's technological systems. Mars Express will be capable of achieving pixel resolutions of approximately 30 kilometers across 3.2 Atlas's surface, Martinez elaborated in a technical briefing disseminated to observatories worldwide. This will enable us to resolve individual structural components and monitor their activities during the planetary approach. If the object is conducting active reconnaissance, we should be able to document specific behaviors and technological signatures. The ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, equipped with its sophisticated color and stereo surface imaging system, would endeavor to capture 3-dimensional imagery of the object's evolving structural configurations. The spacecraft's Nomad spectrometer was prepared to analyze any atmospheric interactions or emissions that might transpire as 3.2 Atlas traversed Mars's tenuous magnetosphere. NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter represented the most sophisticated observation platform available for the flyby event. The spacecraft's high-rise camera, typically employed for ultra-high-resolution imaging of the Martian surface, had been reconfigured to track 3.2 Atlas during its closest approach. The resultant imagery promised to provide the clearest views ever obtained of the object's technological apparatus. Dr. James Wilson, High-Rise Operations Manager at the University of Arizona, had calculated that the camera system would be capable of resolving features as small as 3 meters across on 3-2 Atlas's surface during the closest approach phase. We are going to see individual components of whatever technology this object embodies, Wilson stated during the final preparation briefing. If there are artificial structures, mechanical systems, or surface modifications, HiRISE will document them with unparalleled clarity. The timing of the Mars flyby had fostered unprecedented collaboration among space agencies that had historically guarded their data with extreme possessiveness. Real-time data sharing protocols were established to ensure that all participants would have immediate access to observation results, irrespective of which spacecraft had collected the information. The sheer magnitude of the 3-2 Atlas enigma had compelled traditional rivals to cooperate in ways that would have been unthinkable during earlier eras of space exploration. Russia's approach to the flyby observation encompassed both their active Mars missions and ground-based telescopes positioned to observe the event from Earth. Dr. Dmitry Volkov, director of the Institute for Space Research, had committed Russian assets to provide continuous coverage that would complement the orbital observations conducted by Western agencies. This represents the most significant astronomical event in human history, Volkov declared during a rare public interview granted just days before the flyby. International cooperation is not merely desirable but essential for understanding what we are observing. No single nation possesses sufficient resources to fully comprehend the implications of 3-2 Atlas. China's Tianwen-1 mission, comprising both an orbiter and the Zhurong rover on Mars's surface, provided supplementary observational capabilities that filled coverage gaps left by Western missions. The Chinese Space Agency's exceptional openness regarding their observation blueprints and data-sharing pledges underscored the extraordinary character of the unfolding situation. Enthusiast stargazers across the globe made ready for their own observation endeavors during the Mars flyby. Although the vast distances involved would restrict their capacity to discern fine details that the spacecraft missions could capture, nevertheless, the synchronized network of amateur observations, established by Marcus Rodriguez and his associates, would furnish independent validation of significant occurrences and function as a supplementary information reservoir should technical complications impact the official missions. The scientific groundwork for the flyby had revealed the profound degree to which 3-IATALS had become the central focus of humanity's entire space surveillance apparatus. Deep space tracking systems, typically employed for routine spacecraft navigation and asteroid surveillance, had been recalibrated to bolster the Mars Observation Initiative. Radio telescopes worldwide were precisely positioned to intercept any transmissions that 3 Atlas might emit during its planetary engagement. Dr. Frank Wilson, stationed at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, had instituted listening protocols designed to scrutinize electromagnetic emissions across the entire accessible spectrum for Earth-based receivers. If 3I Atlas communicates during its approach to Mars, whether with Earth or with an undisclosed recipient, we will detect and record those transmissions, Wilson elucidated during the Technical Coordination Assembly that convened observers from 6 nations. The expectations surrounding the Mars flyby were twofold, encompassing both scientific discovery and strategic implications. If 3-2 was indeed engaged in reconnaissance of solar system bodies, its conduct during the Mars encounter would yield vital insights into its data acquisition methodologies and technological proficiencies. Military strategists had devised assessment frameworks intended to evaluate the object's scanning patterns and operational protocols from the vantage point of intelligence gathering efficacy. The flyby would also serve to test various hypotheses concerning 3I Atlas's intentions and origins. Should the object represent a mission of peaceful scientific exploration, its approach to Mars would likely involve comprehensive yet unobtrusive observation, mirroring human planetary science endeavors. Conversely, if it embodied something more menacing, the encounter might expose scanning patterns, data acquisition priorities, or technological demonstrations indicative of hostile surveillance. Dr. Lisa Park, affiliated with MIT, had developed behavioral analysis protocols designed to interpret 3I Atlas's actions throughout the Mars flyby, irrespective of the specific technologies employed. Her framework concentrated on operational patterns, resource allocation, and temporal management as key indicators of underlying objectives and strategic foresight. We can glean information about 3 Atlas's priorities and decision-making processes by observing how it dedicates time and attention during the Mars encounter, Park explained in her pre-flyby analytical brief. Even if we cannot comprehend the precise technologies being utilized, we can interpret the strategic choices reflected in its operational conduct. The Mars flyby signified more than mere scientific observation. It had become humanity's inaugural opportunity to study an alien intelligence actively engaged in what appeared to be systematic exploration. The psychological ramifications of witnessing 3I Atlas conduct reconnaissance of another celestial body would compel human observers to confront their own planet's susceptibility to comparable scrutiny. Religious congregations globally had organized prayer services and contemplative gatherings synchronized with the Mars flyby. Numerous spiritual leaders interpreted the event as a moment of cosmic import necessitating spiritual preparedness and divine guidance. The spectacle of extraterrestrial technology investigating other worlds would invariably prompt introspection regarding humanity's place within a universe that demonstrably harbored intelligences vastly surpassing their own capabilities. Preparations for the flyby extended to the media, with major news organizations planning continuous broadcast coverage of the event and its immediate aftermath. Public interest had escalated to levels typically associated with pivotal political events or natural catastrophes, reflecting a widespread acknowledgement that the Mars encounter held the potential to furnish definitive answers regarding 3I Atlas's fundamental nature and purpose. Social media platforms had proactively enhanced their infrastructure to accommodate the anticipated surge in traffic during the flyby observation period. Initial projections suggested that billions of individuals worldwide would follow the event through diverse online channels, potentially rendering it the most extensively viewed scientific occurrence in human history. The technical intricacies of coordinating observations from multiple spacecraft across immense distances had necessitated months of meticulous planning and unparalleled international collaboration. Navigation specialists had meticulously calculated the precise pointing requirements for each observational platform, while communications engineers had established real-time data sharing protocols to facilitate global coordination of the observation campaign. Contingency backup plans had been formulated to manage equipment failures, communication disruptions, or unforeseen shifts in 3 Atlas's behavior during the flyby. The paramount importance of this observational opportunity dictated that redundant systems and alternative strategies were prepared for every facet of the monitoring initiative. The Mars flyby would also present the inaugural chance to ascertain whether 3 Atlas exhibited cognizance of human observation capabilities. If the object altered its behavior in response to being monitored by multiple spacecraft, it would substantiate suspicions of sophisticated intelligence and situational awareness extending beyond mere autonomous operation. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford had devised analytical protocols specifically engineered to detect indications that 3I Atlas was observing human activities while simultaneously pursuing its own reconnaissance mission. If this object is as intelligent as its actions suggest, it will be aware of our spacecraft and may adjust its activities accordingly, Kim stated during the observation planning session. Such awareness would provide critical insights into its cognitive faculties and strategic thinking. The countdown to the Mars flyby engendered a pervasive atmosphere of anticipation and apprehension that transcended the scientific community. Government officials worldwide had cleared their agendas to closely monitor the event and its immediate implications. Military commanders had elevated surveillance networks to a heightened state of alert, preparing for any potential revelation of capabilities by 3 Atlas that might pose imminent threats to terrestrial assets. As the third day of October drew near, and 3I Atlas prepared for its closest proximity to Mars, humanity braced itself for disclosures that could fundamentally reshape their understanding of intelligence, technology, and their position within the cosmic hierarchy. The ensuing 12 hours promised the most lucid examination to date of extraterrestrial technology in active operation, potentially resolving questions that had long captivated the human imagination, while simultaneously introducing new enigmas that would challenge fundamental assumptions about the nature of life and intelligence. Chapter 10: The Hubble Deception. Anti-tail anomalies. Dr. Jennifer Walsh had been scrutinizing Hubble Space Telescope imagery for 6 consecutive hours before she finally conceded that her observations defied every tenet of cometary physics she had acquired throughout her professional tenure. The images, captured on July 21, 2025, when 3Y Atlas remained 277 million miles from Earth, depicted phenomena that conventional understanding of cometary behavior deemed impossible. The dust trail was oriented in the incorrect direction. Walsh, As a senior imaging scientist at the Space Telescope Science Institute, had analyzed thousands of cometary images during her career. She possessed a thorough understanding of the physics governing the interaction of solar radiation pressure and gravitational forces in shaping the characteristic tail structures that render comets some of the solar system's most captivating celestial bodies. However, 3-2 Atlas was exhibiting behavior that contravened these well-established principles in ways that suggested either a revolutionary paradigm in physics or deliberate technological manipulation. Traditional cometary tails form when solar radiation expels dust and gas away from the nucleus in a direction diametrically opposite to the Sun. Walsh explained during an emergency briefing hastily convened upon the availability of her analysis. What we are observing with 3 eye outlays is an anti-tail structure that appears to be directed towards the Sun rather than away from it. This configuration is aerodynamically and gravitationally infeasible under natural circumstances. The Hubble images revealed a teardrop-shaped envelope of dust emanating from 3I's solid nucleus, with the broader end of the teardrop pointing towards the Sun, while the narrower end trailed behind the object's trajectory. This orientation implied that material was being actively gathered or controlled, rather than passively expelled by natural sublimation processes. The implications were profound. If 3I Atlas was actively dictating the orientation of its dust emissions to create specific configurations, it signified the presence of technology capable of manipulating fundamental forces on scales far beyond current human engineering achievements. The precision requisite for maintaining an anti-tail structure against solar radiation pressure would necessitate real-time force management systems operating at an astonishing level of sophistication. Dr. Sarah Mitchell at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center was assigned the task of formulating alternative explanations for the anti-tail phenomenon that did not necessitate the invocation of artificial intelligence. Her analysis, finalized after weeks of intensive modeling, concluded that no known natural process could account for the observed dust configuration. We have exhaustively examined every conceivable natural mechanism that might produce anti-tail structures, Mitchell articulated in her classified report, which was subsequently disclosed to congressional investigators. Interactions with the solar wind, effects of electromagnetic fields, gravitational anomalies, and exotic sublimation processes have all proven inadequate in providing a satisfactory explanation for what Hubble has documented. The discovery of the anti-tail was initially designated as sensitive information while authorities sought to develop appropriate public communication strategies. However, the classification decision proved counterproductive when amateur astronomers, utilizing significantly less powerful telescopes, began reporting analogous observations, rendering the phenomenon impossible to suppress through official channels. Carlos Mendez, a Chilean amateur astronomer whose home observatory had been providing independent corroboration of professional observations, captured his own images of the anti-tail structure using equipment that cost less than a high-end automobile. His photographs, disseminated online before authorities could implement containment measures, rapidly achieved viral status, garnering over 20 million views within their initial week. "I have been photographing comets for 15 years, Mendez stated in his YouTube commentary accompanying the images. "I am intimately familiar with the appearance of natural tail structures. This is not natural behavior. We are witnessing something actively managing its material emissions to create configurations that physics dictates are impossible." The amateur confirmation of Hubble's anti-tail observations precipitated a public relations crisis for space agencies that had been endeavoring to manage the flow of information concerning 3-2 Atlas's anomalous characteristics. The democratization of astronomical observation meant that official attempts to classify unusual findings were increasingly futile when determined individuals could replicate professional results using readily available consumer equipment. The anti-tail phenomenon became the focal point of intensive scrutiny by researchers globally, who grappled with understanding how 3 Atlas could sustain such improbable dust configurations. Computer simulations indicated that the maintenance of an anti-tail structure would demand continuous energy expenditure and real-time force management at levels suggesting sophisticated technological systems. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford published a comprehensive analysis of the energy requirements for artificial tail control, portraying technology operating beyond the scope of human comprehension. His calculations indicated that 3I Atlas was expending energy equivalent to that of small nuclear reactors solely to preserve its dust configuration against natural forces. "The anti-tail structure represents active engineering of the local space environment," Kim wrote in his technical assessment. Maintaining this configuration necessitates technology capable of simultaneously counteracting solar radiation pressure, gravitational influences, and electromagnetic effects while preserving structural integrity across millions of cubic kilometers of space. The implications regarding energy management were particularly disconcerting when juxtaposed with prior observations of 3 Atlas's seemingly boundless technological capabilities. If the object could casually expend energy on the scale of nuclear reactors simply to generate aesthetically pleasing dust formations, what might it be capable of achieving when deploying its full technological arsenal? Religious communities worldwide struggle to interpret the theological ramifications of an intelligence that appeared to derive artistic expression from the manipulation of cosmic dust. Some leaders viewed the anti-tail structure as evidence of divine inspiration channeled through alien intelligence, while others expressed apprehension about encountering minds capable of reshaping matter and energy according to aesthetic predilections. The concept of creativity manifesting through intelligences beyond human comprehension challenged existing theological frameworks. The anti-tail discovery had also illuminated a disquieting aspect of the information management efforts undertaken by governments and space agencies concerning 3I Atlas. The initial classification of Hubble's findings suggested that authorities were more preoccupied with public reaction and scientific accuracy, raising questions about what other observations might have been suppressed or delayed. Leaked communications between NASA administrators revealed heated internal debates regarding the extent of information that should be disclosed to the public concerning 3I Atlas's anomalous characteristics. Certain officials advocated for complete transparency, while others expressed concern that revealing the full scope of the object's technological prowess could incite social unrest or economic disruption. Her position as the lead author of the foundational 3-2 Atlas research rendered her a central figure in these communication debates. Scientists have an obligation to disseminate their findings to the broader community, yet we also bear responsibilities to consider the implications of information that might incite widespread alarm, Vasquez explained during one of her increasingly infrequent public appearances. The anti-tail phenomenon represents technology so advanced that public comprehension of its ramifications may be fundamentally unattainable. The anti-tail structure continued to evolve throughout the observation period, exhibiting increasing complexity and apparent functionality that suggested it was more than mere aesthetic display. Spectroscopic analysis revealed that different segments of the dust configuration comprised distinct materials, implying systematic organization rather than random ejection. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley published an analysis proposing that the anti-tail structure might function as a form of communication or data storage rather than simple artistic endeavor. Her research indicated that the dust patterns contained mathematical relationships and geometric arrangements that appeared to encode intricate information. The anti-tail configuration demonstrates organizational principles suggesting informational content rather than random artistic arrangement, Santos wrote in her controversial analysis. We may be observing a form of communication that utilizes cosmic dust as a medium for transmitting complex data across interstellar distances. The interpretation of information encoding introduced new layers of enigma to the anti-tail phenomenon while simultaneously raising uncomfortable questions about humanity's capacity to comprehend extraterrestrial communication modalities. If 3I Atlas was attempting to convey messages through dust manipulation, human science lacked the requisite conceptual frameworks to decipher such communications. Amateur radio operators monitoring 3 Atlas reported detecting electromagnetic emissions that appeared to correlate with alterations in the anti-tail structure. The signals suggested that the object was employing multiple communication channels concurrently, possibly attempting to engage diverse recipients through varied technological approaches. The congruence between modifications in the anti-tail and detected radio emissions bolstered interpretations that 3 Atlas was actively orchestrating its environment for purposes extending beyond mere navigation or scientific observation. The object seemed to be executing complex operations serving multiple functions simultaneously. The anti-tail phenomenon also offered insights into 3 Atlas's awareness of human observation. The structure grew more intricate and visually striking as human telescopes achieved enhanced resolution, suggesting that the object was adjusting its displays in response to improvements in observation technology. This responsiveness to human capabilities engendered unsettling questions regarding the duration of 3 Atlas's surveillance of human technological advancements. If the object was adapting its behavior based on human observational capacities, it might have been studying terrestrial technology long before its official discovery. Intelligence agencies worldwide found themselves analyzing artistic expression as potential intelligence data, a scenario for which no training had prepared them. The anti-tail structure was subjected to scrutiny by cryptographic specialists, military analysts, and behavioral psychologists, all attempting to extract strategic information from what appeared to be cosmic artistry. The Defense Intelligence Agency had discreetly established a dedicated task force to interpret the anti-tail phenomenon from the perspective of information warfare and psychological operations. Their classified assessments posited that 3-2 at last might be employing aesthetic manipulation to showcase technological superiority while concurrently probing human responses. Colonel Sarah Martinez, who led the military's 3 Atlas assessment team, found herself drafting reports that more closely resembled art criticism than threat analysis. The anti-tail structure exhibits precise control over matter and energy on scales that vastly exceed our defensive capabilities by orders of magnitude, she wrote in her classified assessment. Whether this signifies intimidation, communication, or purely artistic expression, the underlying technological implications remain identical from a security standpoint. The military's interpretation of the anti-tail as a potential instrument of psychological warfare imparted renewed urgency to efforts aimed at comprehending its purpose and significance. If 3I Atlas was deliberately endeavoring to influence human perception and behavior through demonstrations of technological supremacy, then the object represented a form of assault against which human defenses were entirely unprepared. Dr. Lisa Park at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology had been meticulously dissecting the peculiar anti-tail formation from an engineering standpoint, aiming to deconstruct the advanced methodologies that might underpin the creation and sustenance of such seemingly impossible cosmic arrangements. Her in-depth examinations revealed capabilities that bordered on the direct manipulation of fundamental physical constants. The construction of an anti-tail structure necessitates the real-time orchestration of electromagnetic fields, gravitational forces, and particle interactions across vast expanses of space, measured in millions of cubic kilometers. In her technical evaluation, Dr. Park noted, the sheer computational demands alone point to information processing capacities that far surpass human technology by magnitudes we are presently incapable of quantifying. The computational breakdown further ignited inquiries into the internal information processing architecture of the entity designated 3-eyed Atlas. If this object could simultaneously manage the intricate real-time calculations required for maintaining its anti-tail structure while also conducting extensive reconnaissance, communication, and navigation, its inherent processing power must eclipse human capabilities by an unfathomable degree. Concurrently, amateur astronomers had commenced their own independent analyses of the anti-tail structure, leveraging collaborative networks to monitor subtle shifts and patterns that might have eluded the notice of professional scientific bodies. This burgeoning movement towards the democratization of 3-eyed Atlas research had blossomed into a worldwide citizen science initiative, frequently yielding profound insights that rivaled those produced by official governmental investigations. Marcus Rodriguez, proprietor of the Arizona Observatory, which had evolved into a central hub for amateur astronomical research endeavors, released time-lapse visual documentation illustrating the anti-tail structure's dynamic evolution in real time. His captured footage demonstrated a dust configuration that perpetually reconfigured itself, steadfastly preserving precise geometric relationships despite the relentless chaotic influences of the solar environment. Rodriguez articulated in his analysis videos, which consistently garnered millions of captivated viewers, we are observing the active, deliberate engineering of space itself. This transcends mere dust management. It represents environmental control on a scale that renders human terraforming efforts akin to child's play in a sandbox. The immediate, responsive nature of the anti-tail's adjustments provided further compelling evidence of 3-eyed Atlas possessing reactive capabilities that vastly exceeded those of human technological systems. The object exhibited a level of artificial intelligence capable of processing environmental alterations and modifying its operational parameters at speeds faster than human instruments could even register the resultant changes. Across the globe, philosophical circles began to earnestly grapple with the profound implications of an intelligence that utilized interstellar dust as its canvas for artistic expression. The anti-tail formation embodied a form of creative output that operated on dimensions of space and time dwarfing humanity's artistic traditions, compelling a fundamental reevaluation of established notions concerning creativity, intelligence, and aesthetic appreciation. Dr. Amanda Foster, a distinguished philosopher of science at Oxford University specializing in extraterrestrial intelligence, published a seminal paper examining the anti-tail phenomenon through the lens of xenoaesthetics. Her analysis posited that human attempts to comprehend alien art might be inherently doomed to failure without a vastly improved understanding of how non-human consciousness might perceive beauty and meaning. Foster articulated in her philosophical discourse, "We are confronted with artistic expression that adheres to aesthetic principles beyond our current access. The anti-tail structure may manifest forms of beauty that necessitate distinct forms of consciousness for their full appreciation. Our interpretive efforts might prove as futile as expecting a canine to critique human verse." This philosophical perspective injected a much-needed element of humility into scientific pursuits aimed at deciphering the three-eyed atlas, while simultaneously illuminating the colossal deficiencies in human knowledge concerning intelligence, consciousness, and aesthetic discernment. Should the anti-tail indeed represent alien artistry, humanity might be bearing witness to masterpieces it was cognitively ill-equipped to apprehend. The anti-tail structure also became a fertile ground for the proliferation of conspiracy theories, intertwining legitimate scientific concerns with outlandish speculation regarding alien motives and clandestine governmental cover-ups. These narratives skillfully blended accurate technical data with increasingly sensationalized theories concerning mind control, interdimensional manipulation, and cosmic warfare. The rampant spread of conspiracy theories was further facilitated by the fact that the anti-tail phenomenon genuinely defied known physics in ways that appeared almost supernatural. When established science documented events that seemed impossible, the distinction between evidence-based analysis and speculative conjecture became increasingly blurred for the general public. Educational institutions found themselves compelled to develop novel curricula designed to equip students with the tools to comprehend the three-eyed atlas phenomenon while simultaneously fostering critical thinking skills in the face of information that challenged foundational assumptions about reality itself. The anti-tail structure was increasingly employed as a pedagogical case study, illustrating methodologies for analyzing anomalous data without compromising the rigor of scientific inquiry. Dr. Robert Chen at the California Institute of Technology, who had been investigating the energy expenditures necessary for anti-tail maintenance, released follow-up research delving into the thermodynamic consequences of the dust manipulation. His analysis suggested that the three-eyed atlas was somehow drawing upon energy sources that operated entirely outside the realm of conventional physics. Chen asserted in his increasingly philosophical research, the anti-tail structure represents a violation of thermodynamic principles that should render its existence impossible. Either our comprehension of energy conservation is fundamentally incomplete, or we are observing technology that operates according to physical laws yet to be discovered. The thermodynamic anomalies implied by the anti-tail structure contributed to a growing list of ways in which the three-eyed atlas defied humanity's understanding of natural law. The object was demonstrably exhibiting capabilities that appeared to disregard the conservation of energy, conservation of momentum, and other bedrock principles that form the foundation of human physics. Medical practitioners began to report a discernible increase in anxiety and depression among individuals closely monitoring the developments surrounding the three-eyed atlas. The anti-tail phenomenon, in particular, seemed to precipitate existential crises as people struggled to reconcile evidence indicating that their fundamental understanding of reality was profoundly inadequate. Support groups for mental well-being, specifically addressing anxiety related to the three-eyed atlas, were established in major metropolitan areas worldwide, offering therapeutic guidance to individuals finding it challenging to cope with the implications of confirmed extraterrestrial technology. The anti-tail structure had emerged as a significant trigger for individuals overwhelmed by the psychological impact of witnessing an amalgamation of beauty and impossibility. The sheer aesthetic grandeur of the anti-tail structure had ignited artistic communities globally, inspiring them to embark on terrestrial interpretations of cosmic engineering. Sculptors, painters, and digital artists began producing works that sought to encapsulate the visual and emotional resonance of observing impossible beauty forged through technological means that transcended human comprehension. Some artistic interpretations focused on the intricate geometric precision of the anti-tail formation, while others highlighted the sophisticated intelligence capable of wielding cosmic forces for aesthetic ends. This artistic outpouring mirrored humanity's innate drive to process experiences for which its evolutionary history had not adequately prepared it. The phenomenon, initially dubbed the Hubble deception, had transitioned from a mere technical anomaly into a comprehensive challenge to humanity's understanding of intelligence, technology, aesthetics, and the very fabric of reality. The anti-tail structure stood as empirical proof that the three-eyed atlas operated according to principles that transcended every conceptual framework humanity had devised for apprehending the universe. As the month of October advanced and the three-eyed TALS continued its inexorable approach towards solar conjunction, the anti-tail structure persisted in its evolution, suggesting preparations for activities anticipated during its obscured period behind the sun. The object appeared to be utilizing its final weeks of visibility to convey a message through cosmic artistry, one that humanity was still striving to comprehend, while simultaneously showcasing technological prowess that rendered human achievements primitive by comparison. Chapter 11, The December Deadline. The final countdown, November 21st, 2025, arrived with impalpable intensity that seemed to resonate through the collective consciousness of humanity. According to Dr. Avi Loeb's calculations, this specific date marked the commencement of the temporal window during which any probes deployed by 3 Atlas during its concealed solar transit might begin reaching Earth. For the first time in recorded history, humanity was observing a calendar date that held the potential to signify either the most wondrous or the most terrifying juncture in its species' existence. Dr. Sarah Kim at Caltech had been experiencing prolonged periods of sleeplessness for weeks as the critical deadline loomed. This was not due to a belief in the inevitability of extraterrestrial contact, but rather because the mathematical exactitude of Dr. Loeb's projected scenario rendered its dismissal impossible. During what had become daily briefings for government officials grappling with unforeseen scenarios absent from any existing policy manual, she explained, the principles of orbital mechanics are unforgiving. If 3E Atlas did indeed deploy reconnaissance probes during its solar passage, the immutable laws of physics dictate that they would commence their arrival in Earth's proximity within the ensuing 2 weeks. The psychological ramifications of possessing a definitive timeline for potential first contact had profoundly reshaped human society in ways that social scientists found themselves struggling to meticulously document. Global stock markets experienced unprecedented volatility as investors endeavored to assign value to a spectrum of scenarios ranging from revolutionary technological advancements to the potential extinction of the human species. Religious communities organized continuous prayer vigils, while secular institutions initiated preparations for possibilities that challenged every established assumption regarding humanity's position within the cosmos. Amateur astronomers worldwide had orchestrated the most extensive sky monitoring initiative in history, with thousands of observers coordinating their efforts to detect any objects that might signify incoming probes from 3 Atlas. The Citizen Science Network, established by Marcus Rodriguez, had effectively transformed into a global early warning system, frequently identifying astronomical phenomena before professional institutions could even initiate a response. Rodriguez declared in his widely disseminated video broadcasts, which consistently attracted over 20 million viewers, "We have become Earth's collective eyes and ears for the most pivotal 2 weeks in our species' history. Every amateur telescope on our planet is now an integral component of a detection network that could provide the initial alert of incoming alien technology." The December deadline had also spurred the most significant mobilization of space surveillance assets since the zenith of the Cold War. Military tracking networks, typically employed for monitoring satellite threats and orbital debris, were repurposed to detect diminutive objects approaching from interplanetary space. The challenge of detection was immense, given that any probes originating from 3 Atlas would likely be substantially smaller and possess far more advanced capabilities than anything human tracking systems had been engineered to identify. Dr. Evelyn Reed herself was orchestrating an observation campaign that harnessed the collective power of every major telescope on Earth and in orbit. During a technical briefing disseminated to observatories globally, she stated, "We are undertaking the most intensive search for artificial objects ever attempted. If alien probes are indeed approaching Earth, we will detect them before they reach our immediate vicinity. However, these detection endeavors were profoundly complicated by the inherent uncertainty regarding precisely what they were seeking. Terrestrial spacecraft are large, comparatively crude instruments that generate unambiguous signatures detectable by conventional tracking methodologies. Conversely, alien probes, if they exist, might be small enough to evade detection entirely while possessing technological capacities that could render human surveillance systems utterly ineffective. Consequently, protocols that had existed solely as theoretical exercises mere months prior were now being activated. The possibility that alien technology might soon be operating in Earth's immediate vicinity compelled national security planning into uncharted territory, a domain that no prior generation of military strategists had ever been required to contemplate. The European Space Agency had discreetly repositioned several of its monitoring satellites to optimize coverage of potential approach vectors identified by Dr. Loeb's analysis as the most probable pathways for incoming probes. Dr. Angela Martinez, who was overseeing the ESA's contribution to the detection effort, found herself managing resources initially intended for routine space science, but now serving as humanity's primary line of defense against the unknown. During a classified briefing attended by defense officials from numerous nations, Martinez explained, "We are attempting to detect objects that may be smaller than automobiles, traveling at interplanetary velocities, using technology that potentially surpasses our understanding by centuries. Our detection capabilities may prove fundamentally insufficient for the monumental challenge we face." This profound technological disparity also raised questions about humanity's capacity to respond effectively, even if incoming probes were successfully detected. Conventional notions of interception, deterrence, or defense became largely irrelevant when confronting technology capable of manipulating fundamental forces and operating according to physical principles yet undiscovered by human science. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford University had been analyzing the strategic implications of the December deadline from the dual perspectives of game theory and military planning. His assessment projected scenarios that challenged every fundamental assumption regarding conflict and cooperation between civilizations exhibiting vastly disparate technological advancements. In his strategic analysis, which was immediately classified upon completion, Kim wrote, "We are potentially facing an intelligence that operates on timescales measured in millions of years, while possessing technology that approaches the omnipotent. Traditional concepts of negotiation, deterrence, and defense may be entirely obsolete when dealing with such profound differences in capability and perspective." The religious community's response to the December deadline was both diverse and intensely felt. Certain leaders interpreted the approaching date as a harbinger of divine revelation that would fundamentally transform humanity's comprehension of creation and its ultimate purpose. Others expressed profound concern regarding the spiritual implications of encountering an intelligence that might challenge core doctrines concerning human uniqueness and divine authority. The Vatican issued a series of pronouncements, preparing the global Catholic community for possibilities that traditional theology had never seriously contemplated. Pope Francis emphasized that divine love encompassed all of creation, irrespective of its origin or technological sophistication, while acknowledging that contact with non-terrestrial intelligence would necessitate careful theological deliberation and potentially the formulation of new doctrinal frameworks. Other religious organizations developed their own unique approaches to the prospect of imminent contact, ranging from fervent anticipation of cosmic enlightenment to deep-seated apprehension about challenges to established spiritual authority. The spectrum of religious responses reflected the pervasive uncertainty surrounding what alien contact might signify for humanity's understanding of the sacred and the divine. Educational institutions found themselves compelled to prepare students for a future that might be fundamentally divergent from anything previously imagined. The December deadline necessitated that educators consider how to maintain academic programs and career preparation when the very foundational assumptions about human technological development might soon become obsolete. Dr. Maria Santos at the University of California, Berkeley, developed curricula designed to assist students in comprehending the ramifications of technological contact while simultaneously cultivating critical thinking skills and psychological resilience. Her programs prioritized adaptability and cognitive flexibility over specific technical knowledge that could rapidly become irrelevant. Santos explained during an educational conference convened to address contact preparedness, "We are preparing students for a future that we cannot predict or even fully imagine. The skills we can impart are psychological and intellectual rather than technical, focusing on how to process unprecedented change rather than specific knowledge that may soon be superseded." The December deadline had also catalyzed unprecedented intergovernmental cooperation among nations that had historically harbored rivalries or maintained hostile relations. The sheer magnitude of potential alien contact had compelled traditional adversaries to collaborate in ways that decades of diplomatic efforts had failed to achieve. China's National Space Administration shared surveillance data and detection capabilities with Western agencies, an exchange that would have been unthinkable during periods of heightened international tension. Russian space assets were being coordinated with NATO surveillance systems for the first time since the conclusion of the Cold War. The specter of alien contact had fostered a temporary unity of purpose that transcended terrestrial political divisions. However, this international cooperation was significantly complicated by the pervasive uncertainty surrounding how to respond should contact actually occur. No established international frameworks existed for managing alien contact, and the urgency imposed by the December deadline had precluded the development of comprehensive protocols governing cooperation versus potential competition in such unprecedented scenarios. Dr. Elena Vazquez, a key figure in understanding the artificial intelligence behind 3 Atlas, found herself at the epicenter of debates concerning contact protocols and response strategies. Her scientific investigations had precipitated a global crisis that was now approaching its potential climax, leaving her with responsibilities she had neither sought nor anticipated. Vazquez admitted during one of her infrequent public appearances, "The scientific community has opened a door that we may be unable to close. The December deadline compels us to confront possibilities that we identified through research but are as yet unprepared to manage as a civilization." Amateur radio operators reported heightened activity within frequency ranges that had previously exhibited only background noise, suggesting that something might indeed be approaching Earth within the predicted timeframe. The detected signals were too faint and ambiguous for definitive analysis, but their timing coincided precisely with Dr. Loeb's deployment scenarios in a manner that made them difficult to dismiss casually. These radio observations were being meticulously analyzed by teams of specialists striving to differentiate between natural phenomena, human-generated interference, and potentially artificial signals indicative of approaching alien technology. The task was immense, given the weak nature of the signals and the utter lack of prior experience with alien communication protocols. Social media platforms experienced an unprecedented surge in activity as the December deadline drew nearer, with billions of individuals worldwide sharing theories, anxieties, and preparations for what might unfold during the contact window. The psychological impact of possessing a concrete timeline for potentially species-defining events had engendered a palpable collective anxiety that mental health professionals found increasingly challenging to address. Online communities dedicated to tracking the 3 Atlas had burgeoned to encompass hundreds of millions of participants, diligently following every development in real time. The democratization of information concerning the December deadline had ignited a global discourse on human preparedness and response to cosmic contact, operating entirely outside traditional institutional channels. The December deadline represented far more than a mere date on the calendar. It had evolved into a pivotal focal point for humanity's collective hopes, its deepest fears, and its fundamental assumptions about its place within the vast expanse of the universe. Whether or not extraterrestrial probes had truly arrived as Loe had anticipated, the collective anticipation of such an event had already irrevocably altered human civilization, shaping it in ways that would endure regardless of the ultimate outcome. As November gave way to December, and the window for potential contact broadened, observatories across the globe maintained their unwavering gaze, while humanity collectively held its breath, awaiting revelations that could reshape everything, or confirm our solitary existence within a vast, silent universe. Chapter 12, The Determination, a Natural Marvel or an Extraterrestrial Arrival. December 5, 2025, marked the conclusion of AVI's projected arrival period for probes potentially dispatched by 3-eyed Atlas during its concealed transit behind the Sun. As the final hours of the contact deadline elapsed, humankind found itself in the extraordinary state of collectively holding its breath, awaiting revelations that might never materialize or might manifest in forms too subtle for immediate comprehension. Dr. Sarah Kim of Caltech had been tirelessly monitoring detection grids around the clock for 2 weeks, collaborating with observatories, military tracking installations, and amateur astronomers globally, in what had become the most comprehensive endeavor ever undertaken to locate artificial objects. As the deadline approached without any discernible contact, she found herself grappling with questions that extended far beyond mere astronomical considerations. The absence of overt contact does not inherently signify the absence of any contact, Kim elaborated during a press conference, which had been scheduled irrespective of the deadline's revelations. Our pursuit of alien technology has been constrained by human detection methodologies and our ingrained assumptions about how such technology might behave. Our inability to detect obvious artificial artifacts may reflect the inherent limitations of our investigative capabilities rather than the non-existence of extraterrestrial presence. Humanity was compelled to confront the possibility that initial contact might not unfold according to human expectations or established timelines. The sophisticated intellect behind Three-Eyed Atlas might operate on principles rendering human notions of arrival, engagement, and communication entirely insufficient for grasping the reality of the situation. Amateur radio operators had registered minute shifts in ambient electromagnetic patterns during the concluding days of the contact window, but the signals were too faint and indeterminate to offer conclusive proof of artificial origination. These observations suggested that events might indeed be transpiring in Earth's vicinity, but at a level of subtlety that surpassed humanity's capacity for definitive identification and analysis. Marcus Rodriguez, whose Arizona Center spearheaded citizen science initiatives, found himself meticulously documenting what could be the most anticlimactic yet potentially momentous non-event in human history. We might be observing contact that adheres to extraterrestrial rather than human definitions of communication and interaction, he explained in his final deadline analysis video. The silence itself may convey more significance than any dramatic arrival we might have envisioned. The understated nature of potential contact raised profound questions concerning humanity's perceptual and cognitive boundaries when confronted with intelligences operating under fundamentally divergent principles. Three-Eyed Atlas had already demonstrated technological prowess that defied human understanding of physical laws. Any communication methods it might employ could be equally enigmatic to human observation and interpretation. His research focused on the psychological and sociological ramifications of the deadline's passage, independent of whether actual contact had occurred. His findings indicated that the very experience of collectively anticipating an alien arrival had already fundamentally transformed humanity, irrespective of the final outcome. The December deadline has served as a mirror, reflecting humanity's ingrained assumptions about intelligence, technology, and cosmic engagement, Kim posited in her post-deadline assessment. Regardless of whether alien probes ultimately arrived, the process of preparing for such contact has illuminated fundamental aspects of human psychology and societal organization that we had previously been spared from examining. The passing of the deadline had ignited vigorous debate within the scientific community regarding the interpretation of the absence of overt contact. Some researchers argued that the lack of a dramatic arrival served as confirmation that Three-Eyed Atlas was a natural celestial body whose peculiar characteristics could eventually be elucidated by conventional scientific frameworks. Others contended that the deadline represented merely one potential scenario among many, and that contact might transpire according to temporalities and methodologies not yet conceived by human analysis. Dr. Evelyn Reed, whose trajectory analysis had initiated the entire Three-Eyed Atlas investigation, found herself in the challenging position of defending research that had posited events which did not manifest in the anticipated forms. Science progresses through hypothesis testing, even when outcomes challenge our predictions, she asserted during the post-deadline scientific review. The absence of contact within a specific framework does not invalidate the evidence suggesting that Three-Eyed Atlas represents artificial intelligence. International space agencies opted to sustain their heightened surveillance capabilities beyond the initial deadline. Recognizing that extraterrestrial contact might not conform to human expectations, the detection grids established for the December period would continue their operation indefinitely, evolving from temporary crisis response measures into permanent monitoring systems for potential alien activities. Religious communities worldwide interpreted the passing of the deadline through the lens of their diverse theological perspectives. Some leaders viewed the lack of dramatic contact as validation of divine supremacy over any alien intelligence, while others proposed that contact might be occurring through spiritual rather than technological channels, beyond the grasp of human institutions. The Vatican issued a statement acknowledging that divine purposes operate on timescales transcending human comprehension, while simultaneously emphasizing that the pursuit of truth through scientific inquiry remains a sacred imperative, irrespective of immediate findings. Other religious organizations formulated their unique interpretations of events that had simultaneously fulfilled and thwarted human expectations. Educational institutions found themselves reevaluating curricula developed to prepare students for post-contact scenarios that had not materialized as expected. This experience underscored the paramount importance of intellectual agility and adaptive thinking when navigating unprecedented situations that challenge established conceptualizations of reality. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley meticulously documented the impact of the December deadline experience on student psychology and academic planning. Her research revealed that the prospect of imminent technological revolution had inspired many students to prioritize adaptability and critical thinking over specific technical proficiencies that could quickly become obsolete. The Three-Eyed Atlas crisis has imparted a crucial lesson. The most valuable educational preparation for an uncertain future lies in cognitive flexibility rather than specialized knowledge. Santos articulated in her post-deadline analysis. Students equipped with the ability to think adaptively about unprecedented challenges will be better poised to face whatever the future may hold. The business and financial sectors experienced the deadline's passage as a period of profound uncertainty, followed by a cautious sense of relief that economic systems would continue functioning along familiar lines. However, the inherent volatility and psychological strain of the crisis exposed vulnerabilities within global economic structures that had never been tested by scenarios involving potential technological upheaval. Stock markets endured significant fluctuations as investors attempted to reconcile predictions of technological utopia with fears of economic collapse, ultimately settling into patterns that reflected persistent ambiguity regarding Three-Eyed Atlas's true nature and implications. This experience highlighted the unpreparedness of human economic systems for managing the rapid technological shifts that could accompany extraterrestrial contact. Amateur astronomers continued their enhanced observational efforts beyond the official deadline, acknowledging that their citizen science networks had become an indispensable element of humanity's capacity to monitor cosmic developments. The democratization of Three-Eyed Atlas research had fostered capabilities that would persist irrespective of immediate contact outcomes. The amateur community also embarked on developing novel methodologies for detecting subtle phenomena that might signify extraterrestrial activity operating beneath the threshold of conventional detection systems. These endeavors recognize that advanced alien technology might be deliberately designed to evade obvious detection while still undertaking reconnaissance or other operations in Earth's vicinity. Global intelligence agencies utilize the December deadline as a critical assessment of their readiness to manage unprecedented technological threats and information warfare scenarios. The experience revealed both strengths and weaknesses in systems originally devised for terrestrial, rather than cosmic, security challenges. The Three-Eyed Atlas crisis necessitated the development of new analytical frameworks by intelligence organizations to interpret threats operating on principles that transcended human technological understanding. These analytical capabilities would remain relevant regardless of the accuracy of immediate contact predictions. Mental health professionals documented significant psychological repercussions stemming from the deadline experience, ranging from acute anxiety during the waiting period to various manifestations of relief, disappointment, or lingering uncertainty following the deadline's passing without overt contact. This experience provided unparalleled insights into the human psyche's response to existential apprehension on a cosmic scale. Support networks established to assist individuals grappling with contact anxiety subsequently evolved into communities dedicated to processing the broader implications of inhabiting a universe demonstrably harboring intelligences far surpassing human capacity. Psychological adaptation to cosmic uncertainty transitioned from a crisis requiring resolution to an ongoing developmental process. The passage of the deadline also prompted renewed scrutiny of Three-Eyed Atlas itself, which was anticipated to re-emerge from behind the sun in early December, becoming visible once more to Earth-based telescopes. Its reappearance would offer the first opportunity since October to evaluate whether it had undergone modifications during its concealed transit or had deployed any secondary entities. Preliminary observations of Three-Eyed Atlas as it began to emerge from solar conjunction indicated that the object had indeed experienced alterations during its hidden period. New structural features were discernible, and the electromagnetic emissions detected by radio telescopes exhibited increased complexity and organization compared to pre-conjunction observations. The modifications to Three-Eyed Atlas during its concealed passage provided evidence that the objects had been actively engaged in operations while remaining invisible from Earth. Whether these operations encompass probe deployment, system enhancements, or other activities remained indeterminate, but the observed changes definitively confirmed that Three-Eyed Atlas represented active technology rather than passive natural phenomena. Dr. Reed found herself coordinating renewed observational campaigns designed to document whatever Three-Eyed Atlas might reveal about its activities during the solar passage. We are on the cusp of gaining our initial perspective on what this object achieved during 6 weeks of complete operational anonymity, she explained during the observation planning briefing. The changes we detect will furnish critical insights into its capabilities and objectives. The verdict on Three-Eyed Atlas remained fundamentally inconclusive despite months of intensive investigation and the expiration of projected contact deadlines. The object undeniably represented something unprecedented in human experience, exhibiting capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions regarding technology, intelligence, and natural law. Whether it served as a harbinger of extraterrestrial contact or was merely a phenomenon that human science had yet to comprehend remained an open question, destined to continue shaping human civilization regardless of the immediacy of any definitive answers.